The city is full of life today, just like it apparently always is in a Tier 1 city such as this. A beautiful full moon hanging high in the sky, just towering over the massive skyscrapers that are blocking my view of the rest of the city, despite me already being nearly 30 floors up above the ground. What must be hundreds of Magi-Tech cars quickly flying through the air streets between each building, not even mentioning the various Magic-less cars driving by on the ground belonging mostly to city visitors like me. And dare I mention the lovely shimmer radiating off of each skyscraper's outside windows and walls, acting as a shield in case of a demonic assault occurring in the capital? So much beauty. So much awe. And yet. Are you listening to me? The lady standing next to the comfortable chair I'm sitting on in the middle of the room asks in a rather disgruntled tone. And I so want to respond with no, not really. But I don't. Because that won't help my situation in the slightest. Yes, I answer while turning my gaze away from the large window to see the lady in all her receptionist glory standing next to me. She's wearing relatively normal business attire, with a dress shirt and a plaid skirt, and her hair done up in a braid running down one of her shoulders. I can't help but look up from my seat at her, thanks to her annoying high heels. Something no one will ever find me wearing. Just the thought of it gives me shivers. You can either sit there and wait for 4 more hours for the CEO to come back and kick you out, or you can leave now, she says, her voice relatively high-pitched as she adjusts her glasses with a sneer sent my way. I let out a sigh. One that seems to irritate her even further somehow before I turn my back to her to face the window, where I see my own reflection in the mirror-like surface. In it, I'm wearing my favorite red and black jacket over a random plain black shirt that I grabbed from my closet. One with a simple design on it. And to top it off, a pair of black pants and black boots with a random red necklace. A rather nice color scheme if I do say so myself. It even matches my black hair and incredibly gray eyes. I've already said this, but I'm here because I begin, only for the rude lady to cut me off. Yes, you've said it before. She says with a glare that I can see reflected in the window. You're here because you believe that your old orphanage director, she pauses here to scoff, was the CEO of Silverworks. She scoffs again as if once wasn't enough. Ridiculous. Yeah, this isn't getting very far. But what can I do? It does sound rather outlandish when you think about it, even if it is the truth. Not that I know why he was working as an orphanage director, despite being the CEO of one of the richest companies in the world. Nothing I can do but ignore the lady though, since she can't legally call the cops or the security officers in this building unless I'm being an actual problem for their office. And since they can't get in touch with Alan until he is done with his meeting, and I proved in some ways that I'm at least connected to him thanks to that little badge he gave me, I can sit here for as long as I want. But I do wish he would get here sooner, because this lady is annoying. Or at least let someone else get here to take her attention away from me. As if on cue, the phone over at her desk rings, saving me from the hell of sitting here with her constant discriminatory nagging. It's not my fault I'm an orphan from a Tier 3 city. So please take that nasty face you're making at me and shove it in a pot somewhere. Why a pot? Not sure. Why not? I'm not done with you, she says, still making that face before turning around and walking back across the empty reception room, past the many empty chairs towards her own desk where she sits down and grabs the phone. Hello? You've reached the Silverworks upper reception. How may I help you? I try really hard not to scoff at the obvious difference in treatment. It was like a switch flipped in her head the moment I mentioned orphan and Tier 3. In fact, just hearing the term orphan tends to make people tense up, mostly out of fear that the orphan may be a changeling in disguise, see something that started over 150 years ago. Kind of sad, but not something I haven't grown at least a little bit used to now. After all, the number of times I've been turned away from the universities here in the capital city of the Terran Republic, Terra, is way too many to count. Which is surprising, considering that I didn't even realize they had that many universities to begin with. Then again, they have a lot of stuff in a Tier 1 city that a Tier 3 doesn't have. Flying cars, for example. I let out another sigh while focusing on the peace and not so quiet outside of the building. At the many people going about their day. The flying cars, the shields, everything else that this city has that we didn't have back home. All of it makes it just how clear the world is. In fact, if I had to describe the world in some way, then I'd say it were like a video game. One with handicaps depending on where you're born, rules set in place only for those who don't have the strength or backing to ignore them, and no clear-cut way towards victory. Just one endless battle of wits, blood, luck, and a touch more blood in the case of demonic assaults that everyone has to navigate through every day of their lives. And one where certain people. I glance at the receptionist lady happily speaking away with too many platitudes to count towards whoever it is on the other side of the phone. Have a fun little handicap boosting them far above others even at the start of the game. I lean back in my chair while closing my eyes and facing forwards again. Just the idea of moving up in the world to a Tier 1 city, where I can live a much better life without others bothering me. It's all I really want. But I only have a few more months left to shoot for that goal. Just a few months. And then it's to a Tier 2 city I go instead. Damn it. What the H? My thoughts are interrupted by the feeling of my phone's recently purchased buzzing in my jacket pocket, making me practically jump out of my skin from surprise. I quickly reach into my pocket while opening my eyes, only to find a message from Belle, my best friend. Otherwise known as Arabella Sylvester. The CEO of this very company, Alan Sylvester's daughter. Did you find Dad yet? Following the message is some sort of emoji with a tanuki holding a sign with a question mark. Where she managed to find an emoji like that is beyond me, but I do have to admit that it is a little cute. No. Apparently he's in a business meeting right now in a different building, so I'm left listening to the nagging of a receptionist. Her response follows incredibly fast, making me wonder just what she's doing right now. Just hold tight until he gets back, champ. And don't get yourself into trouble. I blink once, then twice at the text before narrowing my eyes. Now why on earth would I get myself in trouble? I'm perfectly well behaved. You know very well that I'm not the one who gets into trouble all the time. That would be Arthur, your little sweetheart. I respond with a smirk. She's had a crush on Arthur, our other best friend, and another orphan from the same orphanage I stayed at for who knows how long. Even if neither of them have said anything about it to each other. So it certainly makes for fun teasing. Before she can respond, I send another message as if as an afterthought. Also, stop treating me like a child just because you're 3 inches taller than me. I nod my head to myself, satisfied with my work, only for my mouth to drop open when she responds back to me. I'm 4 inches taller, and you know it. So you can go ahead and stop with your little teasing, because Arthur and I are already a thing. They're what? How? When? I begin to type in response, ready to barrage both her and Arthur's phones with texts, only for a loud cracking sound to echo throughout the city, following which a shattering sound akin to glass comes from the skies. When I look out the window, I find myself staring at a blood-red moon, with various cracks in space high above the skyscrapers. A loud alarm begins blaring throughout the building, following which the power to the lights shuts off, leaving us in the dark with the only light being that of the emergency lights and the red light of the blood moon. No. I faintly hear the receptionist screaming while dropping the phone and seemingly having a full-blown panic attack. This snaps me out of the daze I had entered the moment I saw the blood moon. I immediately get up from the chair, feeling slightly dizzy from getting up so quickly after being seated for a long time. Or at least, that's what I'm guessing it is. Then I rush over to the lady, where I try to shake her as I ask, "Do you know where the closest bunker is?" But she's too deep in her panic attack to notice me. All she manages to do is mutter barely audible words, most of which make very little sense in her panic. So I slap her in the face, snapping her out of it before shouting, "Do you know where the bunker is?" That gets her attention, and she finally blinks, sanity returning to her, followed closely by anger likely at me slapping her. But fortunately, she has enough sense to drop it and get up, albeit shakily as she answers my question, "There's one on the other side of the F floor." I nod my head in appreciation before standing up straight again, feeling the dizziness growing stronger and stronger in the process. Strange. Why isn't it going away? I'm pretty sure I've been standing for long enough now. Deciding that it doesn't matter right now, I quickly focus on the receptionist who is still frowning at me. Are you just going to stand there and frown at me? I ask her rather cynically with a frown of my own, snapping her out of it as she turns away and unlocks a door that was behind her desk and leads me through it to a point where the glowing red arrows are. I don't have to ask where they're pointing, considering all of the drills we've had back in high school in case a fracture ever occurred there. Which it didn't. I glance down at my phone as we're walking, noting that my internet connection has been severed before I look up again and massage my temples. Just what's going on? The original bout of dizziness is still growing stronger, but with a headache mixed in with it now. At some point we begin running down the halls, mostly because of the lady rushing off after a loud crash sounds from somewhere nearby. Then, after a few minutes of running, I begin to hear a strange sound. Almost like a bug skittering across the ground. "Miss, do you he dash?" I begin to ask her, only to cut off as a large, 1-meter-long spider suddenly bursts through a door, smashing it in the process before landing on the lady, who is now screaming her head off. Holy shit. Finding that the demon who I'm assuming is probably a spawn, the weakest amongst all of the demons, has already pierced its incisors into the lady's face, killing her and cutting off her pained screams, I perform an about-face and run away as fast as my legs can carry me. But in the process of running so quickly, I only find that my headache and dizziness is growing worse. And to make matters worse, my eyes and the top of my head are beginning to hurt as well. Shit, what the ever-flipping hell is going on? I glance back to find the original demon that had appeared snacking on the receptionist's body, while 2 more of them make their way out of the door before noticing me. And it just gets worse. The instant I meet the terrible gazes of the 8-legged, 8-eyed, black creatures, I speed up my running as fast as possible. Doors fly by me at a rapid pace as I ignore the arrows pointing me in the opposite direction to get as far away from those spiders who I can hear following me as possible. Eventually, I make it to a dead end, so I choose a random door and enter through it, hoping against hope that I didn't choose incorrectly. What I find on the other side of the door is a rather lavishly decorated office. It has a large desk made of wood in the back, with 2 comfortable chairs facing each other in front of it, and an office chair behind it. One that looks more comfortable than the chairs I have at my own apartment. I carefully walk further into the room, onto the massive carpet laid out across most of the floor that I bet is a huge pain to vacuum before stumbling forward and catching myself on the table standing between the 2 chairs. Seriously, what's wrong with me? Out of nowhere, my vision begins to blur, only for everything to gain a red tint and then go back to normal. To get a red tint, and then go back to normal again. Over and over again as the pain in my head gets worse and worse, both around my eyes, and behind them. I hear a growling sound, making me turn to the door, only to remember that the demons were spider subspecies spawn if I had to guess. Not anything that could or should be able to growl. If that's the case, then where did that sound come from? The alternation of my vision repeats over and over again until I lose my strength and fall to the ground. I hear the sounds of spider-like footsteps skittering into the room, only for the red tint in my eyes to suddenly flash really strongly, to the point that I feel like I see a bit of red light reflecting off of the floor. Then the spiders make a panicked-sounding hissing noise and rush out of the room. Before I can so much as question their actions, I hear a masculine yet robotic-sounding voice resonate in my ears. Curious. I barely manage to turn my head in the direction of the voice despite all of the pain that has now spread throughout my entire body instead of just my head, only to find some sort of what? No, seriously. What? Some sort of tanuki is just sitting in the air, floating in place. And very curious. Somehow talking to me? I blink in surprise, somehow forgetting about the pain I'm in for just a single second. Just one. Is a tanuki calling me strange? Yes. I am. But I'm not a tanuki. I'm a fae. Oh. Okay. Sorry about that. Wait, What? Your apology is accepted, mortal. The finding of a half-demon is more than worth the trouble. I groan as the pain grows even worse somehow, shaking me out of my shocked stupor. Your demon half has been awakened and is attempting to swallow your human half. The pain may be incredibly severe, but it doesn't stop the creature's words from registering in my mind. Half-demon? If this continues as is, you will die. I feel tears begin to build up in my eyes as the pain continues to grow, only to suddenly vanish again a second later, leaving me to suck in a violent gasp of air before flopping on the ground in exhaustion. What just happened? I have determined that a conversation will not be fruitful while you are feeling such pain. Therefore, I have numbed your nerves for the duration of our talk. I blink in surprise. It did what? Wait a second, never mind that. What is this Tanu air, Faye, and how can it read my mind? The creature in question floats down to rest right on my chest as I'm assuming it's a he, considering its voice says, I am of the Fae, or as the non-contracted call us, a spirit. And I am here at the benevolence of His Majesty, to grant you a contract. You, the sole half-demon to have ever been born. My eyes shoot open in shock at that. I'm a half-demon? How's that possible? A demon and a human being dash. Wait. I don't mean that. I mean, why did it happen? Why would a human and a demon, You're asking why your mother and your father would get together instead of fight each other? I nod my head repeatedly. The Fae not Tanuki doesn't say anything for who knows how long. So I try to move my body, only to find that I have a lot of difficulty doing so. The answer to your question is unknown. And I would suggest not moving, else you'll speed up your death. My mouth drops open for a second before closing again. Right. All he said was that he numbed my nerves somehow. Not that he fixed me. How is it possible for a human and a? Unless you would like to die in 35 seconds, then I would advise you stop asking questions and form a contract with me. Oh. A vague feeling of fear sweeps through me at the thought of how close I am to death, but I sweep it away with a deep breath that likely doesn't help anything. How do we form a contract? Simply share our blood with each other. I blink in surprise. Do you agree to form a contract with me? To share a small portion of the life force you drain from any demons and humans you kill throughout your life? Life force? Several seconds pass in silence as I stew over that thought. But after a little bit, the Fae reminds me of the remaining time left. 20 seconds. And I make a decision. Right here and now. Whatever will happen after this, I don't know. But I want to be one of those players on the board game of life who have the power to be free. The power to make change. Or put simply, who have power. So yes. I agree to this contract. Very well. So shall it be done. The Tanuki raises its paw and chomps on it before lowering itself to my face and dripping its blood into my mouth. And as soon as the blood touches my tongue, I feel my eyes widening in shock as a strange yet not unpleasant feeling spreads through me, despite my nerves apparently being numbed. It then scratches at my face, drawing only a tiny amount of blood that it quickly brings to its own mouth and swallows. My eyes widen even further as I stare agape at what I know to be one of those system notices that the Guardians always talk about on the news. And the only thing that comes to mind at the sight of it is that it really does look like a video game. System initialization in progress. Please wait. You are now awakening to the system. This process will stop your demon genes from obliterating your human side for the time being. I stare at the notification for who knows how long, a feeling of hope spreading through my still numb chest, only for me to blink in surprise as the Fae's words register in my mind. For the time being? Actually, why are you helping me anyways? Aren't the Fae supposed to be helping humanity against demons? So why are you helping a half-demon in the first place? I don't really want to look a gift Tanuki in the mouth, but it just doesn't make sense. And that doesn't sit well with me. The spirits, or according to this one the Fae from what I've learned back in school, are mystical beings that come from who knows where to help humanity in its time of need against the demons. They first appeared about 2 centuries ago, only a few years after the first demonic assault, and have been contracting with guardians, giving them access to the system ever since. And they only ever appear in the middle of a fracture and enclosed area being assaulted by demons during a demonic assault like the one I'm in now to offer a contract to one of the humans stuck inside of the fracture. The Fae just stares at me for a few seconds before snapping its little tanuki claws in a ridiculous display that immediately has me regretting questioning it as the pain returns to me. I will tolerate your insolence this time, because of how unique you are. But you are not to question us ever again. Do you understand me, mortal? I hurriedly nod my head in agreement. No questioning the Fae, and especially no angering it. Got it. The Fae snaps its claws again, which I still question if that's even possible in a tanuki form before answering my question despite its rather arrogant air, benevolent display. His Majesty, King Oberon, ruler of all of the Fae, believes that there must only be one sapient mortal race and has therefore ordered all Fae to assist both sides of the war in forming contracts, answering limited questions, and granting their contracted initialization into the system. My mouth drops open. They're helping the demons too? Demons. The enemy of humanity. The harbingers of the apocalypse, and enders of the old world. And your kin. The Fae's words strike something in me, making my mouth part in silent shock as the realization fully hits me. That I'm technically part of those harbingers. Those monstrous creatures. What does that mean for me? Am I still a human? Can I still exist on Earth? What'll happen if the demon genes fully obliterates my human genes? Will I die? The Fae seems to answer my last couple questions first, with a rather shocking answer: you will not die. With the system in place, should your human genes be fully obliterated by the demon genes, you will simply become a full-blooded demon instead. However, there are ways to stop your human genes from being obliterated. I let out a sigh of relief, not really sure what I was expecting to hear. The fact that death isn't in that sentence is a huge relief. But becoming a full demon? That. How do I stop my human genes from being obliterated? And is there a way to obliterate my demon genes instead? The Fae, whose name I still do not know, despite having a contract with him, waits for a second before asking, "Girl, do you not wish power? To have the ability to rule?" The question surprises me, and honestly, if he hadn't said it himself, then I probably wouldn't have thought about it. I want the power to do what I want to do. To not be herded around like cattle by those guardians and other wealthy people at the top of the human food chain. Your demon blood is particularly pure, to an incredible degree. With it, you may someday surpass the strongest of humans, even in this Tier 1 city of yours. The Fae responds to my thoughts as if some sort of devil floating over my shoulder, whispering temptations to me. And for once, I might just agree. I never went with what others told me before. When everyone told me to give up on advancing to a higher education because of my status as an orphan, I proved them wrong and became the top-scoring student in our high school. When the Board of Education tried offering me a half-paid scholarship to Retford University in the Tier 2 city of Retford, I managed to negotiate it with Alan's help to be a chance at joining a Tier 1 university in the capital of the Terran Republic, despite my lack of success in that particular department. But now, I feel heat begin to build up all over my body, with it being particularly strong around my eyes, the top of my head, my hands and feet, and my chest. But I ignore it as a burning desire to prove everyone that has ever mocked me and the other orphans wrong grows stronger and stronger in my head. Very good. This may just be the most fun I've had in decades. Through the haze of warmth that I'm feeling, and through my current feelings, I hear the slightest hint of emotion in the Fae's usually robotic tone of voice. And that has me smirking. The best way for you to survive is to remain a half-demon. And to do so, you must hunt. Whether human or demon, you must hunt. You must build up your life force to a point where your genes will reach stability with themselves. Then your path will be set, young mortal girl. The Fae's last words in that sentence feel almost as if it's mocking me, what with how he paused for a split second between each of the last 3 words. but at the same time, I remember hearing in school that the spirits cannot lie. I narrow my eyes at the creature as the heat reaches a fever pitch throughout my body. What is your name, Faye? The Fae-professed Tanuki stares at me for several seconds without saying a word before it eventually answers me in a lower-pitched tone than normal. Tarankar Florid del Vashmir Ditra. As my contracted partner, our lives are now linked, and you deserve to know of my name. The smirk on my face grows even wider. I open my mouth, only to quickly tilt my head when I cough out blood onto the carpet before responding in kind, out loud this time. I am Scarlet Esker. This Fae is a tricky one. I'd better keep an eye on the thing. 1 block away from the building Scarlet is in. The demonic assault so far hasn't been as bad as most of the ones Cypher has to help deal with. And he's been in a lot at this point. Nothing but class 2 and I fractures for the most part. Which is a rather tame, demonic assault. The man can't help but let out a sigh as he watches the civilians run past him into a different room before turning around and stabbing his hand straight through the head of a large demon Fomorian, one of the weakest Class 2 demons often used as cannon fodder in a Class 2 fracture that had attempted to sneak up on him. He then opens his other palm up and whispers, "Flame." Release, making a geyser of flames burst straight out of a small opening in the armor covering his hand, burning another Fomorian alive that was attempting to sneak up on him. The Class 4 Guardian is wearing a full set of cybernetic armor, colored with blue armor plating on his forearms, shoulders, torso, and other areas that are often used in combat to block a hit. These armor platings have veins of blue energy moving between them, serving as the magical conduits of the man's armor, which easily block the fireballs being sent at him by the demon acolyte as he blurs across the cafeteria he is in, his speed greater than the average uninitialized human eye can track. The tables in his way smashing into the walls of the cafeteria in the process of his passing, before his raised fist meets the chest of a demon wraith that was attempting to sneak around the cafeteria to chase one of the citizens that he had already let escape from the room. Damn thing, probably already fixated on one of those survivors. After giving the wraith one more smash to the head, ensuring that it'll never be getting up again, Cypher turns back to the acolyte, raises his hand, and activates a skill that sends a bolt of lightning made out of nanomachines straight at the creature. And before the bolt even strikes, the man turns to the rest of the demons, sending another wave of flames that turns them all into ash, following which he begins walking back to the exit of the cafeteria. All before the ash even gets the chance to hit the ground. 10th floor is cleared, he states into a device on his arm. One of which the Guardian uses in order to get past the signals of the shield that block other types of internet and telecoms. It takes only a few seconds for a response to come through the comms before Cypher nods his head to himself and states, while walking towards the door that the citizens hid behind, "I'll get these citizens to safety before clearing the 11th floor." A beep sounds from the device on his wrist, following which he lowers his arm. But just a second later, another long and drawn-out beep sounds from it, and he raises the arm again. Another call? The moment he sees the caller ID on the small display shown on his arm, his eyes widen, and he immediately accepts the call. "What is it, Belle? Are you okay?" he shouts into the device the moment his daughter's face shows on the other side with a worried frown. The girl has the same amber eyes as her father, with long black hair, and is wearing a white blouse and black pants on the other side of the call, seemingly in a classroom of the university she goes to. Belle immediately nods her head and says, "It's not me you should be worried about. I can't connect to Scarlet." Shit. That's not good. Cypher, also known as Alan Sylvester, frowns at that and asks, "Do you know where she was before this?" At this, his daughter scowls at him and practically shouts into her device, "She was at your company headquarters, to ask you for a favor. Have you not been looking at your emails over the past few days?" She what? The people hiding inside of the pantry room connected to the cafeteria send frightened looks at the door as the muffled sound of someone shouting makes its way through the steel doors. Arabella ignores his outburst of not-so-quiet curses as she asks, "Are you able to go to her?" Cypher shakes his head slowly as he answers, "Not yet. My company's building is, according to Sage, only a Class 1 fracture. So the city board is prioritizing the building I'm currently in, which is a Class 2. Even if I asked, they wouldn't be able to let me out. And even if I tried breaking out, it might destroy the entire building and kill everyone in it in the process of breaking the shield. And all that would do is let the demons escape the building, leaving them unchecked in the streets. Arabella's scowl grows deeper, only to soften slightly as she thinks of the many people trapped in the same building as her father. Just, please hurry. I can't lose her too, she says, a tear beginning to trail its way down her cheek as she no doubt thinks of her dead sister. As fast as I can, Cypher answers with a quick nod before the call cuts out, and he rushes over to the pantry door and proceeds to rip it open with his bare hands. Let's see if I can't speed this up. For Scarlett's sake. The heat grows even stronger, not too long after we exchange names, until it reaches a point that's damned near unbearable. But soon after that, it somehow vanishes in an instant to be replaced with extreme pain that has me silently screaming with nothing coming out of my mouth for what feels like forever. The pain this time is focused on each of the same areas as before, but for some reason, the top of my head feels even worse. Eventually, I find the pain too much to tolerate and pass out, only to wake up again who knows how long later to find that all of the pain is gone. Almost as if it were all a nightmare. After a brief bout of confusion, I look down to find Tar. I am not going to bother trying to pronounce his full name, much less his first one, lying down on my chest seemingly taking a nap. And the sight of him there draws conflicting feelings out of me. For one, he's adorable. But for two, it's an entity who threatened me earlier and likely knows more about me than it's telling. In the end I decide to get up, letting the tanuki fall to the ground without catching it. But no sooner than I reach my full height, I notice something off. Kind of like an extra weight on my head, along with some strange sensation? Some sort of mental switch. What is this? I frown before shrugging and mentally flipping the switch. And almost immediately, everything around me grows much louder and more detailed. To the point that I can hear the footsteps of a spider demon walking down the hall on the other side of the floor from here. I can even hear a freaking conversation going on within the shielded barrier of one of the bunkers on the floor. The very one I was going to with the receptionist lady. May she be at peace with the souls of the fallen. Oh, I also hear the tanuki, Tar waking up on the floor, somehow having not been woken up immediately by falling onto the ground. But then again, it was a comfortable carpet. Anyways, what's up with my new hearing? It's because you awakened. You're no longer human, and your appearance matches that. It takes a second for his words to register in my head. Just a second. Then I scramble for my pocket to find my phone to use as a mirror before showing my face in its reflection. I blink in surprise at the sight of red eyes. Ones that seem to be glowing in the darkness of the office. But what catches my attention more and has me groaning is the sight of what look like black and red wolf ears with small bits of white fur on the inside on top of my head. What's wrong? You don't like wolves? Without even turning to the creature, I answer, expressing my depression with this turn of events rather clearly in how my ears somehow follow my mood and droop. Do you know how much of a pain these'll be? The tanuki, Tar. I need to stop doing that. Tar tilts his head and asks in a confused yet still robotic tone of voice, physical appearance changes are common amongst awakened humans. You won't stand out. And creatures of the same race as you can't identify you, therefore no human can see your identity dash. I cut him off as I turn to him and exclaim, now what do I do if people think I'm wearing a wolf ear headband wherever I go? Tar just stares at me. I glare back at him. My pride is important, okay? And animal headbands are not cool. We continue our staring match for what feels like hours, but is in all honesty probably just like 10 or so seconds, until he lets out a sigh. I smile and give him a nod in triumph before going serious again as I ask, you mentioned that the guardians can't just identify me? Tar nods his little tanuki head. That's good. Is there anything else you would like to check before we move on to your status? I blink in surprise at the question, wondering a little bit why he is actually being slightly considerate instead of the rudeness he was showing before. Either way though, I nod my head and ask, are there any other changes that I don't know about? Something I didn't notice before now thanks to my focus on my ears is that my eyesight seems to be improved a lot, and even has a bit of night vision. Although colors are a bit harder to make out. Whether that's just in the dark or not is something to figure out later. I hope it's just like that in the dark though. Besides the change in your eyes and ears, you also gained a second heart, and the tips of your canines were sharpened a little bit. Beyond that, your hands were prepared for the possibility of transformation occurring in the future through your skills. That's okay, that's pretty cool. I raise my phone up to my face again, before opening my mouth to look, only to find that my canines really were sharpened. Albeit not by much. Not even enough to be noticeable if you aren't looking. If you are finished looking at your changes, I would like to bring you up to speed on your status. However, something dashy begins, only to cut off as I jerk my head towards the door at the sounds of that very same spider demon that I heard earlier approaching the door. You can hear it already. We need to hurry. I nod my head, only for my eyes to widen slightly as a notification appears in front of my vision. System initialization is complete. Welcome to the path of ascension. May your rise be ever fruitful, lone half-demon. Out of the corner of my eye, I find Tar looking slightly surprised at something on the notification. But he simply ignores it immediately after. Interesting. So Tar, all I have to say is status, right? I ask, wanting to hurry it up, just to be surprised by the sight of something appearing in front of me in the place of the notification. Likely my status. Correct. And we will speak later about you calling me Tar. Yeah, I mutter while reading the status floating in front of me. Name, Scarlet Esker. Species, human/blood Lycan hybrid. Magic, blood. Age, 19. Level, 0. SP, 0. Stats. Physical, 14. Mental, 11. Magical, 13. Physical/level, 2. Mental/level, 1. Magical/level, 2. Free points, 0. Mana, 71.5/71.5. Free points/level, 2. Active skills. Blood claws. Skill level, 1. Description. Passive skills. Not applicable. Not applicable. Not applicable. Okay. Your first skill is called Blood Claws. Just think the skill's name and it will activate. We do not have time to go over everything there right now, so close out of your status. After very quickly focusing on the word description, I hear it echoing in my head before closing out of my status without bothering to check anything else. Blood Claws allows the user to coat their hands with claws of blood. The blood used in the skill is either created through the user's mana or drawn from the user's body if they are out of mana. Immediately after hearing the description, I think the word in my head and begin to feel a sort of power connect to me from that word, even if it was just thought in my head. The power then draws on some sort of energy well inside of my chest that I never realized was there. Mana. I knew of the term from video games and the Guardians interviews I've watched from time to time, along with the status itself, but it still feels odd that I would have it myself. As if straight from a movie or a video game, blood begins to form in the air around my hands, coating them and making them look more akin to the paws of a wolf mixed into the form of a human hand, with sharp claws to match. Kind of like a werewolf from the old horror movies in the old world. Is that what I am? I didn't think about checking my species while it was open. Assuming it even listed what type of demon one of my parents was. Clearly some type of wolf though, considering my ears. My thoughts are interrupted as I hear the spider getting incredibly close to the door. And somehow, it seems to be homing directly in on us. Tar seems to understand my thoughts and answers before I even ask. You were releasing the aura of a noble demon the moment you began awakening. But now that you have awoken, you no longer have that aura on you, your human side having snuffed that noticeable effect out. So now the demons that were avoiding this area can smell you and are coming. The sharp leg of a certain spider demon suddenly pierces through the door, making me refocus my attention on the creature. Kill demon now, questioned the tanuki later. Deciding that the best time to strike is when it still has its leg pierced through the door, I sprint forward and swipe my new blood claws straight at the leg. And my claws don't actually do that much. All they manage to do is pierce nearly half an inch in, drawing some sort of ichor that is drained into my claws, changing their color to add a slight green tint before returning to the red of my own blood. The spider demon lets out a pained screech before yanking back its leg and tearing the door off of its hinges in the process, revealing the rest of the demon in all of its spidery glory. And the moment my eyes latch onto it, I hear some sort of voice echo in the back of my head. Demon spawn subspecies, spider level 4. It's level 4? That explains why I barely did anything to it. At least, if video game logic applies in this situation. Good luck and try not to die before I can at least explain your status. My eye twitches at the sheer callousness of the tanuki, whose name I won't even bother saying this time before I jump back, very nearly tripping over the carpet in the process to end up between one of the chairs and the table. Meanwhile, the spider lets out another shriek as it tries and fails to fit through the door, only to end up climbing the wall and then entering while sideways instead of upright. Right as I'm expecting it to jump on the ground and chase after me, it instead begins climbing up the wall towards the ceiling. Are you kidding me? I jump out of the way right before it leaps from the ceiling straight at where I was just standing, destroying the table in its landing. And before it can gather its bearings, I swipe my claws at it again, still unused to having any sort of weapon, much less blood claws to use in the first place. Once again, I don't manage to do much damage to it. But I do at least notice that this time it did a little bit more than the last time. Does it have anything to do with its blood entering my claws? Skill descriptions are not all there is to a skill. Remember this. My eye twitches again as I notice the tanuki floating in the air close to the corner of the room, right beneath the ceiling while watching me fight for my life. But I take a deep breath to calm down again before jumping away when the spawn swipes two of its legs at me, barely missing my head in the process. Unfortunately, in the process of dodging its claw-tipped legs, I trip on the chair next to us, falling to one knee where the spider turns around and tries to snap at me with its incisors, taking a chunk out of my arm in the process as I raise it to block the strike. I let out a scream of pain before gritting my teeth so hard that it feels like they might break. You tearin' damn spider. I shout at the thing as if that'll help while trying to roll out of the way again. After I manage to make it to my feet a couple of meters away from the spider, I glance at my arm to find it leaking quite a bit of blood down from the wound. But surprisingly, the blood ends up mixing with my claws, making them grow slightly larger. That might be useful. Still gritting my teeth to ignore the pain, I raise my head to look around the room, my gaze narrowing on the chandelier that I hadn't noticed when first entering the room. That'll work. Hopefully. Right as the spider begins to charge at me again, I charge right back in its direction, seemingly surprising it for a second. And before it can get over that surprise, I climb up the chair and jump off of it, landing on the spider's back, where I then jump to a bookcase not too far away. I barely miss landing on the bookcase and instead have to drag myself the rest of the way up with my legs dangling. That could have gone better. I turn back to find the spider looking around for a few seconds in confusion before turning to me. So I don't miss the chance to jump again straight at the chandelier above it, where I climb up and swipe my claws at the chain holding it up. Interesting, is the last word I hear before the chandelier comes crashing down on top of the spider, its chain having been shredded with relative ease by my claws. The spawn makes a loud hissing sound that quickly deflates with the sound of its carapace being shattered by the chandelier, but it still tries to move even after the thing fell on its head. So I climb down from the chandelier that is still somehow intact and on top of it to walk over to its face, where I bring my fingers together with a grimace and dig them straight into one of the creature's two largest eyes. A rather unpleasant feeling follows as my hand digs into its head before I quickly rip it out and wipe it on the carpet beneath me. Sorry whoever's carpet this is. But you're probably gonna need to replace it. A ding sounds in my head, followed by another message by that same voice as earlier. Level 4 demon spawn defeated. Bonus EXP is awarded for killing a creature above your level. 10 skill points are awarded for killing your first demon. 5 skill points are awarded for killing your first demon spawn. 1 skill point is awarded for killing a demon. Congrats, you have leveled up to level 1 through killing your first demon. 2 free points have been awarded to you and your stats have been updated. As soon as I hear that, I flop onto the ground with an exhausted grunt. And soon after, the tanuki flies over to me before landing on my chest again. Your use of the name Tar aside, I will not be subjected to being called a Tanud dash. Before the tanuki can finish, I cut it off by barely saying through my exhaustion, I don't care. You're a tanuki. Get over it. At first I was gonna be nice and call him Tar. But that was until he decided to watch me fight for my life as if I were some pawn or thing that didn't matter. The tanuki narrows his eyes at me and crawls up to my face before literally stomping its tiny foot on my cheek. Which, as expected, doesn't exactly do much. Why exactly was I afraid of this thing again? Oh, right. Because it was numbing my pain earlier during the awakening. And it could have stopped at any moment. I raise my arm slightly to look at it, where a large cut in my favorite jacket now lies, revealing a bloody gash equal in size on my pale-skinned arm beneath. Seriously? That's going to be a pain to sew up. Because I am not replacing this jacket. I don't really care about the shirt underneath though. That'll just go in the trash later. Several seconds pass in not so comfortable silence considering the burning pain going through my arm before I finally notice out of the corner of my eye that my hair now has red highlights that it didn't have before. Odd. Doesn't matter though. Better red ones than yellow or some gross color like that. The tanuki also kind of falls off of my face when I turn my head to look at my hair, but that's a little inconsequential right now. Especially when he just floats back up to stop right above my head with a rather displeased expression on his face. Open your status. I blink in surprise at the fact that the usually arrogant and overbearing tanuki isn't actually saying anything in regard to my actions right now, only to mentally shrug and think, status. Name, Scarlet Esker. Species, human/blood Lycan hybrid. Magic, blood. Age, 19. Level, 1. SP, 16. Stats. Physical, 16. Mental, 12. Magical, 15. Physical/level, 2. Mental/level, 1. Magical/level, 2. Free points, 2. Mana, 81 of 90. Free points/level, 2. Active skills. Blood claws. Skill level, 1. Description. Passive skills. Not applicable. Not applicable. Not applicable. Oh, that's nice. Not really sure what's different from before, but I'm guessing my stats are higher since the voice, which I'm assuming is the system, said that I'd leveled up. Wait. I'm half-blood Lycan? I stare at those words for who knows how long. Oh. So one of my parents is one of the strongest races of demons? A noble demon bordering on royalty? What the hell was a Class V demon doing getting involved with a human anyways? Judging by the fact that there are spawn in this fracture, it is most likely a Class 1 fracture. The weakest type of fracture there is. And likely the only reason I'm alive right now. As for my magic, well, considering that I'm half-blood Lycan, that makes sense. Let's get this over with before anything else gets here, the tanuki begins, drawing my attention back to it. Your listed magic is what determines the direction that your skills will go in terms of the power they're based off of. It does not mean that it's actual magic. Although in your case, it might just be that later on. Yeah, I already knew that part. Stats do not change your body at all. All they do is alter the way your body interacts with reality around you, making you stronger in the sense that your presence in reality is stronger and you therefore are physically, magically, and mentally more powerful than you were with lower stats, which is something a lot of humans don't seem to understand, he continues, making my eyebrow raise slightly at the indignant manner of which he spoke that last part. The stats you get per level are decided by your species and your magic combined with what class, as you humans call it, that you're in. Levels 1 through 100 being Class 1, 101 to 250 being Class 2, 251 to 500 being Class 3, 501, 1000 being Class 4, and anything beyond that Class V. Wow. He's really just going straight through it, without wasting any time. What each stat does should be self-explanatory, and I'll correct you in the case that you're wrong. All I'll say on that front now is that a 10 in each of the three main stats is the average for most unawakened humans, he says, ignoring my thoughts. Next up, we have skill points and skill levels. There are two types of skills. Inherent, which are what you get from leveling up, and purchased skills. You have to level up inherent skills through using the skills, whereas you have to level up purchased skills and purchase them in the first place using skill points. Now think, skill store. I blink in surprise, trying to register everything that he just said. Because while he's right that the stats are rather self-explanatory. Mostly. I haven't heard much talk about the specifics of skills. Deciding to just go ahead and do as he says, I think skill store. Skill name. Achievement requirements. Descriptions. Classifications. SP price. Predator eye. Unlocked through killing a demon at a higher level than you by at least 3 levels. The lowest rarity predator skill. It grants the user a 3% boost in stats when fighting a creature at a higher level than themselves. Passive. Static. Common. 10. Clean. Unlocked through killing your first demon. A basic utility skill used to clean the user and their equipment. Active. Static. Common. 10. Repair. Unlocked through killing your first demon. A basic utility skill used to repair non-magical clothing. Active. Static. Common. 10. Recharge. Unlocked through killing your first demon. A basic utility skill used to recharge magical equipment through the user's own mana. Active. Static. Common. 10. Before you spend your skill points, I would like to advise you taking Predator Eye, Tar says as I read through the skills. At this point in the fracture, there are far more likely to be more demons above your level than at or below your level, so any little bit will help. And the rest of the skills you have access to at level 1 with your achievements are simple utility skills. Ones not meant for battle. After reading through the first 2 or so pages of skills, I quickly come to agree with the Tanuki before reaching out and touching the words Predator Eye, making a confirmation message appear afterwards. So I touch the word confirm, making a warm feeling spread through my body for a few seconds, before vanishing again. Now to explain. Skills are broken down into 6 rarities. Common, uncommon, rare, epic, legendary, and mythical. Each of them costs a different amount of SP to purchase, and the skills get quite a bit stronger the rarer they are. But they're also a lot harder to unlock through achievements. Suffice it to say, if you unlock a high rarity skill, you're going to want to purchase it. I glance at the Tanuki before looking at the status I still have open next to my skills list, briefly noting that my SP dropped from 16 to 6. And that I have the new skill added to it already. There are 3 different types of skills. Active, which are skills that must be used in order to activate, passive, which are active all the time, and static, which are skills that cannot level up. They will always be at level 1. Literally every single skill I have unlocked right now is a static one. And only one of them has a requirement other than to slay my first demon. Also, I find it weird how helpful the Tanuki is being now considering how it treated me in the fight. My eye twitches at his blatant admission that he would have just let me die. So much for our lives being bound together. The Tanuki ignores my irritation to continue his explanation of skills. Unlike purchasable skills, inherent skills are not purchased unless there's something called achievement-locked inherent skills. They simply come to you at certain levels, depending on your magic and species. but they are always at least as strong as purchasable skills up to the rare rarity. At the same time though, their strength varies depending on your magic and species. I glare at him for a few seconds, before sighing and focusing on the skills list again. Many purchasable skills are locked behind achievement restrictions, as you already know by now. But some of them are also locked by magic restrictions, only allowing you to purchase them if you have the necessary magic amongst the listed magics they require, he says, pausing slightly as my wolf ear twitches at the sound of another spider spawn entering the floor from the stairs on the other side of it. Most skills of any use in combat only become available after you reach level 10. So don't bother searching through them for anything you can use to help you right now. That explains why they're almost all utility skills, except for Predator Eye. Also, considering that there's an old world country number, I think it was called a Roman numeral after the name, there's probably a higher rarity for the skill. Which makes me wonder what would happen if I bought that too. Would they stack? Or would one replace the other? I'm distracted again by the spider that's slowly approaching our room. At this rate, it'll likely get here in about 5 or so minutes. Stupid spawn and their sense of smell. How does a spider even smell in the first place? That should be everything. So you can go ahead and deal with that pest, Tar says, making me do a double take at him for calling the demon a pest. Wasn't he supposed to be a neutral party to our little war? While I am considered a neutral party, after we sign a contract, most Fae end up rooting for the side that they signed the contract for. Besides, even other demons consider spawn pests. Oh. That makes sense. Also, isn't that a little brutal? For demons to consider one of their own a pest? Actually, don't answer that. Wait, what about the mana stat? How is that calculated? The Tanuki gives me a less than useful answer, math. I stare at him until he explains further. You can figure out the exact formula when you lead this fracture, just know that it is a combination of your mental and magical stat, he finally answers after a few seconds of staring. That's better at least. I slowly get up from the ground again whilst cradling my arm, still feeling the blood lightly trailing down it from the wound. At some point the blood claws on my hands just kind of flickered out while I wasn't paying attention, so I reactivate the skill by thinking its name in my head again. Blood claws. Then I begin to slowly walk towards the door. Maybe I can find a storage room somewhere on the floor that'll have bandages after this fight. Or better yet, a bunker that hasn't already been locked. But the chances of the latter are rather low, considering how it's already been at least half an hour, maybe even an hour, who knows how long I was unconscious for since the demonic assault began. Here's to hope, I guess. As I walk over to the door, I notice Tar vanishing out of the corner of my eye. And when I turn around to look, I don't see him anywhere in the room anymore. Huh. I've gone invisible now that we are leaving the room and may make contact with people, his voice resonates in my head, making me feel slightly uncomfortable in the process. It's weird to hear someone talking and not know where the voice is coming from. At least with phone calls and stuff, you know the voice is technically coming from the phone. But not in this case. Neither me nor the Tanuki speak for a little while as I walk out of the office and begin heading down the hall, occasionally checking doors along the way in the hopes of finding a storage room. Only to have no luck in that department. By the time I make it halfway down the hall to where the door of the receptionist area that I was at when this all started is, I finally stop as the sound of the spider stops right outside of that very door. I then stare at the door for a few seconds, slowly spreading my claws outwards while tensing up ever so slightly. Seconds pass by in silence, with only the occasional chittering noise of creaking joints from the spider moving in place on the other side of the door. Why is it waiting? Unless the huntsman demons are too quiet for me to hear, there shouldn't be any more demons on this floor. Meaning it can't be waiting for anything. Could it be going to sleep? I wait another 5 or so seconds before my impatience gets the best of me and I barge right through the door to find the spider demon eating a corpse in absolute silence. One that I do not recognize. The creature jerks its head up as it hears my entrance, but I've already swung my clawed hand at its side, tearing a much deeper gash through it than I was ever able to make on the other spider. And that's when the voice echoes in my head, telling me the demon's information. Demon spawn subspecies, spider level 2. That explains it. The demon lets out a loud screech of pain before I follow up with another strike with my claws, albeit with my wounded arm this time. And the pain that comes along with it has me wincing. I feel more blood pouring out of the wound, eventually leaving a trail to my claws on that arm before the claws themselves grow in size and opacity. While I'm not sure how to drain my own blood to power the skill, or even how to enhance the skill with extra mana, I do at least know that my blood can enhance it even if it's just blood from a wound like this. I hurriedly try to jump back, away from the spider as it sends a sharp limb straight at me, only for that very limb to get stuck in the wall in the process. So I take advantage of this to rush forwards again with my wounded arm, where I straight up grab at the back of its head, letting my claws dig deeper and deeper into it until the entire spider begins to convulse. It sends another clawed limb at me, but I notice it getting slower and slower the closer it gets to me, all the way until it stops the instant I dig my other clawed hand straight through the spider's eye, trying very hard to avoid its incisors in the process. Level 2 Demon Spawn defeated. Bonus EXP is awarded for killing a creature above your level. 1 skill point is awarded for killing a demon. As soon as I hear the messages, I rip both of my hands out of its head with a very disgusted look on my face at the sight of green blood coating the ends of my jacket sleeves. I'm going to get that cleaning skill. Absolutely going to get it. All guardians end up getting 3 of the utility skills that are pretty much a requirement unless they want to end up covered in demon gore with completely ravaged clothes, leaving them nearly half naked and filthy every time they leave a fracture, Tar suddenly says, responding to my thoughts. Good to know. Too bad I can't afford another skill right now. Also, if I had to guess, you mean the clean, repair, and recharge utility skills? Correct, he answers right away, his voice still slightly disconcerting me. Thought so. The rest of the utility skills don't seem anywhere near as useful. Since I don't have any magical items to recharge, that leaves me with either repair or clean. And right now, I only have a single cut on my clothes. So clean would probably be better. Especially if I want to avoid getting an infection in my wound. I wipe the ichor from my jacket sleeves onto the chair, briefly glance at the spider limb still stuck in the wall, then glance at the window that I was just staring out of not too long ago, before this all started. So much can change in just however long it's been since it started changing. And while I might not have wanted to end up like this, I can't help but glance at the wolf ears on my head showing in the reflection of the window. It will make life a lot easier on me. Since no one should be able to tell that I'm not just a regular guardian. Right, Tar? The tanuki appears closer to the window for some reason before answering, you're correct. There should be no way for humans to know that you are not one of them. This is because no one can identify members of the same species, and since you're half human, you are considered the same species as them. I nod my head with a smile. That's good. I walk over to the window before looking out it, through the shield that is likely there, invisible to those of us inside of it, at the blood moon hanging high in the air. For some reason, the moon makes me feel calm. Relaxed even. Is it because I'm half blood Lycan? As I stand here, basking in the red moonlight, I feel a strange tingling sensation arise from my wounded arm. And when I look down at it, I find the wound radiating a faint red light. Huh? You didn't know? The tanuki asks in a slightly mocking tone of voice that has me turning to look at him with a scowl on my face. Blood lichens heal in the direct light of the blood moon. Oh. That's nice to know. I pull my arm as carefully as I can out of the jacket sleeve so as to not irritate the wound or get any more blood than I have to on my jacket before going closer to the window. The tingling sensation grows stronger and stronger the closer I get to the window, and soon enough I can see the wound very slowly closing on its own. Very slowly. Seconds pass, and soon enough, the seconds turn into minutes. Before long, I feel like I've just stood here for nearly 5 entire minutes, before the wound is small enough that it's nothing more than a very faint scab. So I put my arm back through my sleeve, frowning slightly as I feel some blood along the way, but otherwise ignoring it. Guess I don't need any bandages anymore. I smile at that thought before turning around and walking towards the stairs. It sounds like there are a few demons on the floor beneath us, with more and more on each floor beneath that. Meaning that the fracture's core is most likely closer to the bottom of the building, which is rather far away from us here on the 30th floor. And if I remember correctly from the drills and classes we had to take in high school about demonic assaults, the fractures tend to appear close to large gatherings of humans, on a place close to a flat surface. Meaning that it's probably somewhere between the 1st through 5th floors, since those are the most populated. The tanuki vanishes again as I make my way to the staircase down the hall from the receptionist area. After a quick walk down the stairs, I find myself entering the 29th floor through the open stairwell. But before I enter the rather large greeting room on the floor, I walk over to the edge of the stairwell center to peek down at the lower floors. And as I suspected, I see quite the number of demons on the lower floors just moving through the stairs themselves. What makes it even worse is that I can hear the occasional scream coming from the other floors now that I'm at the main stairwell, an area connected to every floor of the building. I shake my head after a few seconds before going into the greeting room, which is basically just a massive room with a few areas full of comfortable chairs or couches meant for relaxation while people wait here for something. What this floor is meant for, I'm not sure. But I do hear people on the floor. And none of them are in a bunker, by the sounds of how loud their voices and movements are. At the same time, none of the demons are near them either. So there's that at least. From what I can hear, 2 of the demons are most likely more spawn, while the 3rd demon on the floor is something else. It clearly has only 2 legs, but at the same time, it has much lighter steps than anyone else on the floor, and is moving around through the floor rather slowly. If I had to guess, then I'd put my money on it being a huntsman. Which is a type of demon that tends to narrow in on someone they mark as their prey, before chasing after them and beginning their hunt. It's also something I'll have to worry about, since they actually use a weapon. A crossbow. To start things off, I head in the direction of the spawn closest to the humans on the floor, since it may go after them while I'm dealing with the other 2. Look who's already getting into their role as a defender of humanity, I hear the tanuki's voice echoing in my head. But I can't help but frown at its words. No, not really. While I do think it would be a shame for them to die, I'm not some superhero who'll run around killing demons all the time to save people's lives. After all, it's their lives to live. Not mine. Life in a Tier 3 city taught me how heroes end up in the end. 6 feet under. Oh, the tanuki mutters, sounding both slightly amused and interested. Tell me then, half-demon. Why are you going after the one closest to the humans first, despite it being the furthest away from you? Because the demons will be stronger if they kill the humans there. And that would make it a bigger problem both for me, and the other people on the floor below us if I don't manage to take the demons out. Also, why not? So it's a pragmatic choice of what would be better for the masses or for you, over what would be better for an individual other than you. That, or a whim? Tar asks, sounding more and more curious as I continue making my way through the hall, getting closer and closer to the spawn in the process. Which also happens to be getting closer to the humans too. Yeah, I guess. Call me selfish or cold all you want, but I'm not going to sacrifice my life for a stranger. And at the same time, if I can help people without it inconveniencing me too badly, then I will. After all, there's no reason not to. The tanuki stays silent this time, not responding to my thoughts. I continue running down the hall for a little bit longer before turning the corner and finding a wide open room, with what appears to be a bunker standing wide open on the other side of it, and a demon spawn in the middle of the room. The room itself looks like some sort of middle room area, with various doors branching off of it, some of them being wide open and showing an office on the other side. There are pots and plants located closer to the middle of the room, with even a large tree smack dab at the center. My eyes move towards the open bunker to find a group of 11 people trying to close the bunker door, but failing. Is it broken? No matter how many people they have trying to pull down the lever to close the door, it doesn't budge in the slightest. Which really shows a lack of care in this floor. Maybe I should mention that to Alan the next time I see him? I look directly at the spawn of which is moving closer to the people in the bunker before a light smile tugs at my lips. Demon spawn subspecies, spider level 2. Another level 2. This shouldn't be too hard, I think. The instant the people in the bunker notice me, the terror on their faces is replaced with hope, and I even hear several of them muttering, "Guardian." I give them a brief nod before activating my blood claw skill again and leaping straight towards the spawn, landing on its back, and startling it in the process thanks to its attention having been focused solely on the people in the bunker. It lets out a loud screech that only grows louder as I dig the claws of both of my hands into its body. Then a sudden flash of light makes me blink twice to clear the spots from my eyes before I glance towards the people to find two of them pointing their cameras at me while the others continue trying to close the door. The two being the youngest of the group. Just a couple of high school girls, by the looks of it. Seriously? One of them even seems to be recording. Which'll be a pain. Why are they here anyways? I focus on the spawn again as I begin to climb its body closer to the head, only to notice out of the corner of my eye an incoming leg to which I move my arm up at the last moment, making the claw strike at its own back. By the stars, that could have been painful. The spawn lets out a high-pitched screech showing off just how painful it thought it was before I finish making my way across its slightly longer than a meter body to grab onto and dig into its head, just like the last one. Then I finish it by dragging myself forward and stabbing my other hand into its biggest eye. That's really turning out to be a good way of killing them. Although it's rather gross every time I do it. I turn my head towards the bunker again to find that the people are still staring at me. Oh. Right. I get off of the demon's corpse right as the message plays in my head about the EXP. Level 2 demon spawn defeated. Bonus EXP is awarded for killing a creature above your level. 1 skill point is awarded for killing a demon. That should make 8 skill points now. Just 2 more and I can get the cleaning skill. After cancelling my blood claw skill, I wipe my hands of the demon's ichor onto the very small amount of fur that the spider has before walking over to the bunker, grabbing the lever on the outside of it, and yanking it down with all of my strength. Just to find that this one is working perfectly fine. A little awkward. Guess I kind of assumed that if the inner lever wasn't working, then the outer one wasn't too. But then again, they probably didn't think about the outer one since someone would have to be outside to pull it. And there's no way to open it or get inside after pulling it. I glance at the now shutting doors of the bunker to see a few more pictures being taken of me to my irritation, along with several people waving and expressing their appreciation towards me. After the door finishes shutting, I find myself heaving a sigh of relief. I really don't deal with large groups of people well. You do realize those pictures and that video will likely be blown up as you humans say on your internet by morning? I hear the annoying Tanuki tell me something I already know and very much wish wouldn't happen. I cut him off by saying, yeah, I know that already. Such a pain. Despite how cute he looks, he's practically a devil on the inside. Why are you in the form of a Tanuki anyways? I ask out of curiosity as I walk back towards the hall I came from to head towards the other demons on the floor. Whatever my appearance is, it's your fault, he says, sounding ever so indignant in his response. But I stop walking at that, with a confused expression on my face. How's it my fault? We Fey take on the appearance of whatever animal not including humans was last on the mind of the human we approach for a contract, the little Tanuki says, making my eyes widen. Oh. So, it's Belle's fault then. I nod my head, satisfied with my shifting of the blame before I continue walking down the hall. Somewhere in the back of my head, I hear a certain Tanuki scoffing at my thoughts. But I ignore it. It only takes me around another 10 or 15 minutes to navigate through the maze of a building to find the next demon spawn. And I quickly kill it simply by jumping down from a balcony of an upper deck in the room it was in to land on its back and proceeding to do the same thing I've done with the last few demon spawn. Level 2 demon spawn defeated. Bonus EXP is awarded for killing a creature above your level. 1 skill point is awarded for killing a demon. Congrats, you have leveled up to level 2. 2 free points have been awarded to you, and your stats have been updated. I let out a sigh as I feel a nice surge of something that feels almost like adrenaline rush through my body from the level up. Then I open my status to check out the differences, only to pause and ask the Tanuki out loud, "What do you think I should put my free points in? I kind of forgot to distribute those earlier." Tar lets out a sigh of relief before answering, "It's about time you asked." "Oh? So you were waiting for me to say something about it to talk about free points? That doesn't sound like something a good mentor should be doing." The Tanuki appears in the air in front of me with a disgruntled look on his cute little face as he practically shouts in my mind, "I am not your mentor. I am your contracted partner. Get it straight, girl." I raise an amused eyebrow at his loss of composure. "Right. Keep telling yourself that." Tar flies up to my face and literally punches me, to no effect. Then he floats up and lands on my head of all places, and begins answering my question as if this interaction had never happened. "My thoughts are always to keep your stats relatively balanced, albeit with your species' stronger stats with a little bit of a lead. So I'd suggest putting your free points into mental to let it catch up a little bit with the other 2 stats before spreading the spare around wherever." Makes sense, I guess. Don't want to leave one of your stats far behind the others, making a blatant weakness open up. Although, what does the mental stat actually do? It increases your ability to affect other people's minds through skills, to defend against others attempting to affect your mind, and lastly, your ability to process things. Right. So having a low mental stat compared to my other stats would leave me weak against mental attacks then. Good to know. Name, Scarlet Esker. Species, human/blood Lycan hybrid. Magic, blood. Age, 19. Level, 2. SP, 9. Stats. Physical, 19. Mental, 16. Magical, 17. Physical/level, 2. Mental/level, 1. Magical/level, 2. Free points, 0. Mana, 121 of 136. Free points/level, 2. Active skills. Blood claws. Skill level, 1. Description. Passive skills. Predator eye. Skill level, static. Description. Alright. That should work. You put 3 free points into mental and 1 into physical? Tar asks rhetorically before muttering, "Not bad." I smirk at that before heading off to deal with the last demon on the floor, which is currently standing in front of the sealed bunker. Looks like I was right. It is a huntsman. And its prey got inside of the bunker, leaving it unable to do anything to them. Honestly, I could probably just leave it there and it would never move an inch. But I want its EXP. So back to that room I go. I take one look at the huntsman before turning around and leaving. Demon huntsman subspecies, none level 15. Good thing it already has a fixation. You're lucky this time, but you might not be the next time around, I hear the Tanuki warn me. Be more careful. Ah, is the little Tanuki actually worried about little Omi? Of course, he doesn't respond to that. Looks like the Fae isn't as bad as I'd thought. Still keeping my eye on you though. And would very much appreciate some privacy in my own head too. He stays silent to that as well. Yeah, didn't think so. But it was worth a try at least. Anyways, my mind returns to that huntsman. The thing really did have a humanoid form, just with a pale gray skin tone, 2 odd stubs that look like the beginnings of wings, and a crossbow in its hands just aimed at the door. But despite it aiming at the door, it wasn't moving an inch. Just sitting there. I honestly had a small urge to go over and kill it while it was there despite its level, but I know the huntsman isn't brain dead. Even with its fixation, it would still attack me if I got close enough. And I can't just throw it out the window or something, considering that the shield is a one-way thing, blocking anyone from leaving the building during a demonic assault, but not blocking people from entering. So it'd just shatter the glass before being blocked by the shield. Of course, I could try knocking its crossbow out of its hands, but that would be a risky plan. Especially considering that I don't know if they're able to fight without the crossbow or not. And if they are? Then that is a good way to end up dead. If the shields protecting the outside of the building themselves were like the ones on the bunkers, then maybe. But a demon 13 levels above me is too much of a risk. Such a scary creature. Whoever its fixation was is lucky I got to them before it did. I continue walking through the floor until I get to the stairwell before going down the stairs and entering the 28th floor, which seems to have a lot more demons than the other two I've been to. It has around 8 or 9 wandering around the floor. And there doesn't appear to be any people on this floor, unlike the last. Or at least, not any outside of a bunker. I hear some muffled sounds at one spot, along with the blaring of a shield, so I'm guessing the bunker on this floor is active and the people inside. Meanwhile, of the demons on this floor, only 4 of them seem to be spawn. The other 4 or 5 sound like hounds. Which are the second weakest demons. Thankful that there aren't any huntsmen on the floor, I walk into a simple office room, filled with dozens of cubicles before continuing on until I find the first demon spawn on the floor. Demon spawn subspecies, spider level 4. It's a higher level again. Of course it is. The demons will only continue to grow stronger as you get closer to the core of the fractures. You should know this, Tar says in a slightly exasperated tone of voice. Yeah. I know. Doesn't change the fact that it's making this harder than it needs to be. You could have gone upstairs instead of downstairs to find weaker demons instead, but you chose to go down, he mentions, making me stiffen up slightly at the realization. He's right. Why did I go downstairs? Because I barely heard any demons at all upstairs? Because the demons upstairs felt like they wouldn't be a challenge? No, it's because they wouldn't make good prey. I blink in surprise at that thought. Prey? When did I start thinking of demons as prey? Ever since you awakened as a half-blood Lycan, Tar responds as if it's no big deal. Shit. Changing species wait, of course, changing species, or awakening to a new one would alter my instincts a little. Just the thought of going back upstairs to fight weaker demons and level up the easy way leaves me feeling appalled at myself. And I'm not sure how to feel about that. But right now isn't the time, as the demon spawn hiding in the cubicle is likely to notice me any second now, and I don't have a moment to waste lest I lose my advantage of surprise. So I climb up the wall of the cubicle before jumping straight onto the spawn and latching on with my claws into its carapace, which feels a lot easier than I was expecting. Probably the free point I put into physical along with the level up. Thanks to that, my claws sink into the demon's head just as easily as they would have sunk into a level 2 demon spawn's head before the update to my stats, making me grin slightly as the demon tries to shake me off of its back. I don't let it though, and its shaking ends up causing more damage to it thanks to my claws stuck in its head than to me. Until it begins trying to slam me into the walls of the cubicle, which doesn't really work all that well either considering that it's not an actual wall. So the cubicle simply collapses instead of me being knocked off. I vaguely hear another of the demon spawn getting closer and nearing this room of cubicles, but I put it aside for the moment to focus on digging my claws deeper and deeper into the demon's skull. Meanwhile, the creature continues letting out loud screeches throughout the process while flailing a few of its limbs at me in a poor attempt to cut me apart. And I say poor because most of those limbs are getting stuck in or straight up slicing through some of the furniture and appliances scattered in the fallen cubicle. Eventually, the creature's struggle draws to a close and it falls silent, with the system giving me my message not too long after. Level 4 demon spawn defeated. Bonus EXP is awarded for killing a creature above your level. 1 skill point is awarded for killing a demon. I let out a sigh before smiling. That's 10 skill points. Right as I'm about to open the skill store to purchase them, my mind returns to the other spawn as it enters the room from the opposite end of the cubicles. So I immediately duck down. Shit. Demon spawn subspecies, spider level 5. This one's even stronger. I would suggest you purchase the skill now. I frown at the urgency in his request before opening the skill store and purchasing the clean skill. Then I quickly use it, making 3 points of mana drain away as all of the ichor and blood covering me magically disappears. Now leave that body and hide in a cubicle if you still want your advantage of surprise, he continues, making me understand what he's doing. The spawn might have been able to smell all of the ichor and blood covering me since I haven't been able to wash it off of my hands at one of the bathrooms like I did before entering the floor. At least, it might be able to if it got close enough. And it's heading to the body now. I quickly do as the tanuki says and hide in the cubicle next to the destroyed one. It's a little surprising that Tar is helping me though. I wonder why. Now, many of you should have noticed by now that demons often follow certain patterns in the fractures. That's because of their instincts, or what we demonologists often refer to as their demonic instincts. The professor for my demonology class, one of the core classes for first years for obvious reasons, explains while walking up and down the various aisles of the half-circle shaped classroom, her heels clicking on the tile floor every time she goes down a step. We don't know why demons have these instincts, since they're a clear obstruction for their own survival more often than not. Almost as if they were artificially put into them somehow, outside of natural evolution. But some people believe it to be some sort of curse. Others just think it's a balance for their advantages and power over us humans. She reaches the front of the room again and pauses for a second while turning around. But no matter how many theories there are, none of them have ever been proven. I continue writing down my notes on my terminal screen splayed out in front of me on the device used in each classroom, one that connects to a student's terminal and allows them to stream their screen to the much larger screen on the device here. Yes, Katana Maiden, the professor calls out a student by their title, which seems to be a common thing since the other class I took today had the professor doing it as well. So I look up from my notes to find the very same girl that I had defeated at one point in the ranking tournament duels. The one who's wearing samurai Magitech armor from one of the countries to the east, before the nations all merged into the Republic. Actually, I think it may have originated from the country of the old world that had fallen to the demons and is now their home. The island now known as the Demon Island. The girl stands up rather stiffly for some reason as she answers, haven't the researchers from the government been able to gather demon corpses from the Demon Island? Did they not find anything out from them? Good question, Professor Loris, otherwise known as Sharpshooter, says with a nod before answering, yes, the government has plenty of demon corpses from the island. But even with those, they weren't able to find out anything about the demon's instincts beyond that it is not a chemical process in their body like human hormones. I frown at that before tapping my stylus against my chin a few times in thought. If the instincts aren't through chemicals, then some sort of curse or just a magical process sounds most likely. What do you think, Tar? Do you know the reason behind it? No, Tar answers, but then he adds, we do suspect that it may have had something to do with the humans that used to live on Tartarus though. Likely some sort of curse. But even we haven't been able to confirm it, and Father won't say anything on the matter either. A curse does sound most likely to be the cause, but wait, your father might know, but isn't telling anyone? Tar doesn't respond to that. Guess that's something he can't tell me. The professor looks at her terminal on her forearm before saying, looks like that's all the time we have for today. She raises her head. Make sure you look over the syllabus once more before coming into class again next week. I blink in surprise at that before remembering that we only have core classes on Mondays of each week. So I won't be having demonology or the guardian law class that I had earlier again until next Monday. Everyone begins gathering their stuff and I do the same, disconnecting my terminal from the device and shutting it off before getting up from my seat and beginning to walk towards the door. I don't actually personally know many of the people in this class, outside of when I beat half of them up in the tournament, so it's a rather peaceful class in general. The university seems to have 5 sets of classes for each class on Monday, with 5 professors teaching each of the 2 classes. And it looks like I just didn't end up in the same class as any of the others for demonology. Although guardian law is different, since I have it with both Belle and Emily. Not that it matters much since we all stay silent during the professor's boring lecture. since laws are indeed very boring to learn about in a class. Have you decided on which electives you're gonna take yet? Tar asks as I leave the classroom, thankful that I don't have any bags or anything to carry like I would have back in high school. Mostly. I know I'll be taking the class over blood magic and the one for indoor combat, since battling in the middle of a cramped hallway is annoying. But as for the other elective, I'd recommend taking the class over achievements, Tar suggests, making me raise a brow for a moment before shrugging and mentally adding it to the list. That makes my schedule complete. There was another required class tomorrow, right? Tar asks, sounding curious as he shows just how little attention he was paying when I went over everything earlier. Then again, I don't really blame him. Yeah, there was. This one is System Basics. A mandatory class for all first-year students to make sure they understand the basics of how the system works. Oh, right, Tar mutters before suddenly appearing in the air in front of me and then moving to land on my head, but the moment he touches my ears I duck, almost yelping in the process. He pauses for a second only to go to my shoulder instead and sit down. I frown as I glance at him. Why are you sitting on me? He glances back and asks, why not? We stare at each other for several seconds until I shrug and mutter, touché. Then continue walking towards the top class gated area. After making it past the guards at the gate, who all send confused looks towards Tar for being out in broad daylight sitting on my shoulder, I head straight towards my suite. And after entering it, I go to my room and then closet to change into gym clothes to train in. Only for Tar to offhandedly mention how pointless that was when I'm literally walking around in my Magitech armor, not having bothered ever deactivating it except for when I went to bed last night. Oops. I turn back around and leave my suite before going to the training hall located within the mansion. But when I get there, I find someone else already inside of it. Someone I recognize. Anthony Wilson, otherwise known as Necro, turns from where he's currently training in the center of one of the vast training fields to look in my direction, likely having heard the door shutting behind me. The guy is wearing just a simple pair of shorts as he fights against a bunch of robotic dolls, immediately returning his attention to the fight after seeing me. Why is a magic-focused guardian training so hard, judging by the amount of sweat I see on him in hand-to-hand combat? Well, it's always good to have all your bases handled, Tar says, and on second thought, I can't help but agree. Just never really thought I'd run into him here. I had heard that he was one of the 5 seated Class 1 students in the top class, but I didn't know he was in the same mansion as my suite. Anyways, I ignore the guy to head towards one of the other training fields one far away from him, before messing with the controls to activate the dolls. I should really work on my own hand-to-hand and claw-to-hand combat, since it could use a lot of work. After a couple hours of training, I stop the dolls with an audio command, stop session. Then I use the clean skill on myself to wipe off any sweat that had built up before turning around and beginning to make my way towards the exit, only to find Anthony standing there leaning against the wall while watching me. Do you want something? I ask while putting my hands into my jacket pocket, stopping a few meters away from him. As if on cue, a fae in the form of a miniature swan appears in the air. The fae then says with the same sensation of power that Tar has in his voice, "Greetings, young one. My name is Artoria." I frown for a second before my face goes neutral again when Tar appears in front of me and immediately says, "Sister. So you finally decided to meet with me?" The princess of the fae asks with a frown somehow appearing on her face, which I wonder how is possible since swans have beaks. Or is it just because we met on Earth? Tar sighs, although I don't think he does it out loud. Just in my head. Get on with it, Artoria, Tar says, not bothering to answer her questions. He's been avoiding her since the tournament? That's kind of surprising. Although considering how he initially reacted towards her, I guess it isn't. Not really. You already know that I want to work with you and Artemis for the fake competitions, so what is your answer? She asks rather bluntly. Tar sighs again, before floating onto my shoulder and answering, "It's too early to decide on that. Let's leave that for when the competition is closer at hand." He then speaks directly to me through telepathy or whatever mind link our contract gives us. "Let's go." I don't need to be told twice as I immediately begin to leave, only giving Necro a single nod to which he returns, already having changed back into his Magitech gear at some point. Which isn't saying much considering how it's still just a shirt and shorts, basically meaning that the only difference is that he's now wearing a shirt as well. My armor at least has a shirt, pants, and a jacket. Much better. His armor is rather pointless if you really think about it, Tar suddenly says, jumping into my line of thought as I enter the hallway outside of the training room and begin making my way towards the cafeteria in the mansion. It barely offers any protection at all. Only around his torso, shoulders, and thighs. The areas covered by the shirt and shorts. Yeah. There isn't much point to it. My armor, even if it looks like regular clothes, covers everything. So it's much more useful. But his doesn't cover enough to really be considered armor. It's bizarre. I do kind of wonder if I'll have Anthony in one of my classes though. It's possible he could be in tomorrow's System Basics course, or in the Interior Combat or Achievements courses. If I had to guess, I'd say the Achievements course. Because I think that one was limited to either advanced and top class students only, or top class students only. I can't remember which. I continue making my way towards the diner before walking into it to find a few people already seated, eating their meals in peace. Meanwhile, the chef can be seen standing in the kitchen with an open counter between the dining area, which is very high class and not some run-of-the-mill cafeteria, and the kitchen. I stop in the middle of the dining area, since calling it a cafeteria really just sounds wrong for something this high class. Especially since I see the chef using mana in his cooking. This should be your first time seeing a pure support and creation guardian. Tar states. These guardians have no combat-related skills unless they specifically purchase them, but are able to infuse their magic into different things. Some of them can create magical food that will have beneficial effects on your body, others can infuse their magic into items and technology, which is where your Magitech came from. Interesting. Guess I'll be trying magic food for the first time. The moment I walk into the System Basics course, I find a few familiar faces there. For one, Belle is sitting in the back, and she waves at me the moment she sees me. And for two, several of the stronger people that I fought during the tournament are in the class. Such as that Drake guy who was breathing fire and could cover his arms with scales, along with that Sentinel guy with his divine retribution magic. I can't help but raise an amused brow when I see Drake visibly flinch at the sight of me before acting like he never saw me. Then I return the nod Sentinel sends my way. Also, as it turns out, Sentinel isn't as creepy as I'd first thought. Apparently one of my guesses was right and people are just very touchy and openly intimate where he's from, so he starts out that way with everyone he interacts directly with until told not to. Which I find to be a rather odd order of things, but at least he's not gonna do anything like that again. After making my way up to the back where Belle's sitting, I sit down next to her and start connecting my terminal as she talks. How's your classes been so far? I answer without looking at her, focusing my attention on the device as I type in the code to connect it. Not bad. Guardian Law was boring though. She chuckles at that and responds with an agreement. Then she goes on about a couple of the students in her class asking her to join their team because of her barrier-type magic. Which I did eventually find out was a mental-type barrier, meaning it's made from mental energy. One of the best types that it can be made from. Also one of the reasons she was accepted so quickly to the university after contracting. Although she doesn't have any skills right now that use mental energy, unfortunately. Eventually, long after I had already finished setting things up, the professor arrives in a burst of steam from the front of the classroom, immediately stopping the chatter in their manner of entrance. The steam then flies out throughout the room and shuts each and every door. Hello, first years, my name is Lawrence Knight, the professor who is still cloaked in steam to a degree that makes it hard to make him out says, a deep voice echoing through the room, but many of you might know me as Nautical. Oh. That guy. If I remember correctly, he's a Class 4 Guardian that a lot of places prefer to do without purely because of his magic being very heavily reliant on steam. So every place he fights in or uses his magic in tends to become incredibly humid and kind of wet by the time he's done. There are much worse guardians in terms of inconvenience post-battle though, so no one ever complains about him. After all, if the people would complain about any one guardian, it'd be Blue. But no one is going to complain about one of the 5 strongest humans in existence. Especially when they know he's unhinged. Unless, of course, they're stupid. Let me begin with a few things first, the man says, the steam around him finally clearing up enough for us to see the man who is wearing some sort of blue mask with a black and blue suit on. I do not tolerate tardiness. If you are late, you will not be able to attend the class. And if you are absent, there will be no way to get the materials for the class you missed. His eyes narrow, the steam around the room starting to clear up. Do you understand me? Yes, sir, everyone, myself included, answers in response. He snaps his finger out of nowhere, making the rest of the steam clear away, relieving my eyes in the process since it was really bothering them. Then he taps his hand against the screen in the back of the room, turning it on, before tapping away at his terminal and linking the two. This class is meant to teach new guardians like you everything you need to know about the system, he says, an empty status appearing on the screen as he does so. Now, to start things off, can someone tell me one thing you should never do in terms of the system? Several people immediately raise their hands, but the man just looks through the room before glancing at the highest-ranking people here and eventually narrowing his eyes on me. Then he calls out, "Scarlet Wolf, what about you?" I hold back a groan. So he's going to be one of those teachers, the type who calls on random people or just those he doesn't like? Regardless of who is volunteering to answer. I answer the question rather quickly though, unbalancing your stats when distributing your free points. Correct, he says before moving on, unbalancing your stats is the single most stupidest thing any guardian can do. Besides simply jumping into a horde of demon berserkers while still at class 1. That has me raising a brow, but he simply taps on his terminal again and continues as the status changes to show what I'm assuming is a fake status of someone at level 5 with the name Bob. Now, many of you all know, and if you don't I have to wonder what rock you're living under that we humans live congregated in large cities. He raises his head again to look at us with his eyes narrowed as he asks, "Why is that?" Not even giving anyone a chance to raise their hands this time, he points directly at Sentinel, who answers, "Because there aren't enough guardians to cover an extended space, so the casualties became decreased when the people were more congregated where the guardians could actually reach them. Even if it led to more demonic assaults in the process." Also correct, he says with a satisfied nod before adding, "But there is another reason. It's because of guardian greed." This gets a few people whispering, but he simply taps his foot once, making a wave of steam flare out from him, shutting them up. Guardians from the early days of the demonic assaults, after the artificial nights given to us by the Fae had already handled a great deal of the issues created by the demons, suggested the cities congregate more and keep their walls more closely guarded from entry and exit for security purposes. But they really wanted to be closer to the fractures themselves in order to have a closer supply of EXP. Wow. This guy is very blunt and harsh in everything he does, isn't he? That he is, Tar mutters in response, clearly listening as well. Which is odd, since he didn't really listen to the other professors. Now, tell me why higher class guardians don't simply rush to lower class fractures and wipe out all of the demons there, he says while pointing at Drake, making it pointedly clear that he is calling out the highest ranking people in the class in terms of the school rankings. And unlike me and Sentinel, Drake, the asshole whom I taught a lesson during the tournament, doesn't answer right away. In fact, he stutters a bit before beginning a sloppy answer that Nautical simply cuts off. Enough. Make sure that you study the textbook, as that is most assuredly going to be on the exam. Drake grimaces, but the professor ignores him and answers his own question. Higher class guardians don't simply go through the lower fractures to clear out the weaker demons there for EXP, because the penalty for EXP grows larger and larger the greater the level gap is. And once you're an entire 50 levels above whatever you're killing, you do not get EXP anymore. Period. You will instead have to go fight stronger demons. So the higher class guardians don't simply clear out the weaker fractures, since they not only believe it'd be a waste of time for them, but a lost opportunity for the lower class guardians to train themselves against the demons. He pauses as his eyes narrow. Even if this does mean more human casualties. Whispers break out amongst the students again at this. And this time he doesn't stop them and instead continues, "Now I know a lot of you don't like that answer, but it's the full truth. We do not live in a utopia. We live in a world more akin to the hell of the old world mythologies when compared to the old world itself. Life is not fair, nor is it equal between guardians and regular humans." Oh. Wow. This guy is not afraid to state his opinion? Tar finishes for me, and I can't help but lightly nod my head in agreement. Yeah. Not afraid at all. Now, moving on to the system itself, or rather the automatic management of the system, Nautical continues as if he hadn't just said any of that. Many of you already know of the system's voice that echoes in your head when you kill a demon or level a skill. What you don't know is just how this automatic management system works. And that is a large part of what you will be learning in this class. Someone raises their hand after he finishes that statement, surprising me for a moment. But not as much as the sight of the professor actually pointing at them and saying, "Speak, Ripple." The student whose title is apparently Ripple quickly asks, "Sir, what exactly is it that stops higher class guardians from simply babysitting and power leveling their lower level and lower class association members?" Good question, Nautilus says, once again surprising me. To answer that, I'll have to get a bit into how the automatic system works, but to keep it simple for now, I will just say that the system does appear to be able to read our minds. It can tell apart everyone's intent and factors it in whenever dishing out EXP and achievements to any involved individuals in a demon's or human's in the case of the demon's death. And never has a single person ever been able to fool the system. Not for lack of trying though. He pauses for a second as if waiting for other questions before continuing. Over the years, we've been able to learn more and more about the system both through personal experience and what we've managed to get out of the Fae, and it's clear it was designed to not have any free will or ability to make decisions outside of its, let's say, programming, meaning it will always make the fairest decision at the time. Even if that decision may not seem morally correct to some of you. Yeah, that I can tell already. Just from the system rewarding me for almost dying over and over again while also warning me about risk. Rather two-faced, if you ask me. I don't laugh though. Partially because it wasn't that funny, and partially so that I don't get stabbed by a glare from this rather intimidating man standing at the front of the class. Moving on, I'll be going through our vocabulary for the semester, and then I'll be walking you through a brief rundown of the various penalties that the system applies, he says before tapping on his terminal. So I do the same to expand my notes and prepare to start taking them. This is going to be a long class. And moving on, we have the penalty for killing a demon 15 levels below you, he says, and I can't help but smother a yawn. Because this really is one of the most boring classes I've ever seen, beaten out only by Guardian Law. Right as I'm about to glance at Bell though, the sound of glass shattering echoes across the entire campus as the air becomes tinted with red. And I immediately see Nautilus frowning as he stops talking. He then begins emitting steam again and says, "The rest of the class will be pushed back to next week, added on to the end of the next class. Make sure you read the first chapter of the textbook and remember the terms that were discussed so far. That'll be all. Now go out to the fractures." The man vanishes in a bout of steam as all of the students get up from their seats, myself doing the same. I look down at the device only to find that apparently it had automatically disconnected my terminal from it, likely some sort of protocol built in at the start of a demonic assault. Then I focus on Belle, to find her typing away at her terminal, likely calling for the others. We both quickly leave the lecture hall before leaving the building entirely and immediately finding a limo sitting there waiting for us with the others there. And everyone quickly looks at me for directions, so I show them the alert that I got while we were walking over here, and they pick the closest Class 1 fracture for us to head to. As we drive though, I can't help but think of the professor's last words. About the class being tacked on to the end of next week's class. I was really wondering how they'd handle demonic assaults here, but I guess they just move the remainder of any class interrupted by a fracture to the next week. Which also explains why each day only has a single class except for Mondays. And even Mondays only have 2 classes, each only 2 hours long. It was rather confusing, since from what Belle had told me, the classes for her old university were much more frequent through the week and also a lot longer. But this system makes perfect sense when you factor in the demonic assaults. Although it was a big deal back in Rothwell if a demonic assault ever occurred, since they were rather infrequent. And they also appeared most often in the orphans district, since we had the most people there. Even if it only happened like once every couple months or so. The only reason I had never been caught in one before coming to a Tier 1 city. That aside, I focus on the window of the limo for a moment, only to glance at my terminal to look at the map around the place we're headed to. Which this time is not a mall or a hotel. It's a park. A wide open park with a massive, shielded dome around it and quite a bit of wildlife and greenery inside, along with ponds and paths through a small mini forest. This is going to be interesting. And the first time I won't be fighting in an enclosed space, the tournament notwithstanding on account of it not being in reality. I quickly feel adrenaline fill me at the thought of fighting again and earning more EXP. Maybe now I'll finally be able to get some of those epic skills that have been sitting in my skill store for days now. As it turns out, the process of killing demons in the park is very similar to how it was in the ranking tournament. What with it being a forest filled with Class 1 demons in the middle of the night with a blood moon high in the sky. The only difference being that the trees are trees. Not whatever the trees on Tartarus are. And there are people to save. There's another group of people a little ways in that direction, I say while pointing east, and Michael quickly nods before we begin making our way through the trees. Good thing we have your ears, he says as we jog through the woods, and I notice the others nodding their heads at that. I don't say anything in response, simply flexing my claws, both the transformed one and the non-transformed one, as I think of hunting another demon. Since it really feels like it's been forever since I last hunted demons and got EXP from them, even if it's only been a few days. And that thought alone is a tad worrying, since most people aren't exactly anxious to go about hunting things. Well, you're half-blood Lycan, Tar says as if it's obvious, hunting runs in your blood. The human part of me says otherwise, but at the same time, my instincts agree. When we make it to the humans, we find them being slowly surrounded by a pack of a dozen demon hounds, so we all rush into action to deal with the hounds, quickly breaking their formation. The hounds then put up a decent fight, but the things are only around level 29 on average, which is 11 levels below me. It's annoying that we're only hunting weaker demons though. What, would you rather go back to almost dying in each fracture you enter? Tar asks, and when I don't respond right away, he says, you wouldn't, right? I finish off the last demon hound and drain it of blood, storing it in my blood storage. Honestly? It did give me a bit of a thrill fighting for my life. But no. When I go back to fighting solo again, it will be when I'm at a higher level, with higher level skills. Tar just sighs at that. Sorry. You shouldn't apologize when you aren't actually feeling sorry, Tar mutters as I watch Michael treat the wounded civilians. Bad things tend to happen when you're in a fracture and alone. So try not to get separated. I can't help but raise a brow at that. You just jinxed it, didn't you? I'm gonna end up separated now. Ha, 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 Tar says sarcastically, and I can practically feel him rolling his eyes. Very funny. That was for my comment on karma before, wasn't it? I have no idea what you're talking about. He snorts at that. I proceed to ignore the snort, only to frown as I hear something strange. A noise that I'd been hearing multiple times back to back the further east we went. Kind of like the sound of a large egg cracking and liquid coming out of it. Not really sure what it is, but it's really odd. At first I thought I was hearing things. But then it continued getting very slowly louder. Damn it, here too? Tar practically shouts in my head, making me wince slightly before he suddenly mutters, shit. My frown grows deeper. What did you mean by here too? Tar goes silent. My frown turns into a scowl. What are you hiding from me this time? I'm sorry, Scar, but I really can't tell you. Tar's strained voice comes, sounding quieter than normal, even if I really wish I could. Then his voice disappears again. Tar? No answer comes. Well, that's not foreboding or anything. I walk over to the others before kneeling down next to Michael and whispering to him, we might have trouble soon. He glances at me with a frown, only to nod and quickly finish healing the civilians. He then points them towards the closest underground bunker, to which they repeatedly thank us before rushing off. What is it? He asks, and I quickly describe the noise, making his frown grow deeper. I'm not sure what it is, but if I had to guess, it's probably some sort of breeder. But maybe a variant one? My eyes widen in shock at that, and the others tense up as well. A variant demon. One who is different from the others of its same species in some way. Sometimes even intelligent and sapient. Other times simply going by different instincts. But always more powerful. Far more powerful. Shit, I mutter, and the others nod at that, agreeing with the sentiment. And a variant of a breeder of all things? This is going to be a disaster. Breeders are demons that give birth to large numbers of spawn, all at the same level as the breeder. They're always protected by two knights, but are weak themselves with little in the way to defend themselves. Kind of like the queen of an anthill. Meant for breeding new spawn and are defended by others while doing their job. But normally breeders simply give birth to the spawn directly. They don't lay eggs, like this one seems to be doing. If those hatching sounds are anything to go by. How often are they hatching? Michael asks, frowning all the while. Which isn't a face I'm used to seeing him make often. About a dozen or so have hatched in between now and the time we started heading over here, I answer right away, glancing in the direction of the noises. But when I turn back to Michael, I find a conflicted look on his face. And that surprises me. If the spawn continue to hatch at the pace it's going now, we could end up with a massive amount of variant spawn depending on what type of variant the breeder is, Michael slowly says, making looks of horror spread through the others at that thought. So it would be best to deal with it now. But there are those knights to deal with. We should scout out the situation first before making a decision, Emily suddenly interjects, speaking up for the first time in a strategy meeting. I raise both my brows at her, only for her words to register in my mind. Wait. I'm the best scout here, aren't I? The others recognize this fact as well and turn to look at me, Belle with a look of horror on her face that is much worse than when she heard about the variant spawn. Well, this could be interesting, I mutter, a faint grin beginning to spread across my face again. Looks like it's back to solo work for a little bit after all. Just like Tar said. After more than a little argument from Belle, I manage to make it away from the group and begin heading in the direction of the variant. While, of course, killing any demons I run into along the way. And throughout this process, I still don't hear from Tar again. Which makes me wonder what happened. His last words sounded strained. Like he was barely able to say them. And when his voice faded away? It felt almost as if he was leaving against his will. I hope he didn't break a rule or something. Because while I would very much like to know what he was talking about, I would also rather not lose the fur ball. Because his fur is nice to pet, and he makes a good hug pillow. Maybe some other reasons too, but mostly those. Yep. Mostly those. As I get closer to the variant, I stop killing demons so as to remain quiet and instead begin jumping from tree to tree instead. And as soon as I catch sight of the creature, I immediately tense up and want to turn back around. Demon Breeder Variant Subspecies, Arachnid Queen Level 43. Demon Knight Subspecies, Not Applicable Level 50. Demon Knight Subspecies, Not Applicable Level 50. Demon Spawn Variant Subspecies, Arachnid Level 43. Demon Spawn Variant Subspecies, Arachnid Level 43. Holy shit. I tap on my terminal, not moving from my spot no matter how much I want to before sending a message with the silent feature, blocking out any noise from my terminal in the process. The message includes a picture of the demons along with detailed descriptions of their levels and numbers. Now, their levels aren't that strong. In fact, the queen itself should be rather easy to take down since it's a higher level than me only by a few levels. Which means Predator V will give me a nice boost far past its strength. But the knights are a problem. Not to mention the 15 or so giant spiders around it. The breeder itself really does just look like a giant, fat spider that is sitting in a web covering several trees, with a clearing around the covered trees. It has black and red hair on its body, not fur, like the spiders that I saw in my first fracture had and only realized later on is not a normal thing for a spider to have, and 8 total legs with 8 eyes to match. Meanwhile, the arachnids just look like mini breeders but without the extra fat in their bodies and less pronounced red streaks in their hair. The knights are just regular old knights though, which is a relief. My eyes narrow as I watch the spiders all skitter about around the web while the queen seemingly lays another egg. Meanwhile, the 2 knights simply patrol around in circles on opposite sides of the little nest. Actually, it might be possible to deal with them if I do it carefully. I wait a few seconds to see if Tar is back and ready to say something about me being reckless, but he doesn't. And honestly, he would probably agree that I can handle them as long as I don't take them all on at once. Since I'm level 40 right now, and the spiders are only 43. Which with the Predator skill is more like they're a lower level than me. My terminal screen turns on again with a very dark light, taking my attention back to it to find Michael suddenly sending a very short message leaves me rather surprised. Be careful and don't mess up. Wait, what? How did he actually? Never mind. He has Belle with him. And he probably knows by now about how much of a trouble magnet I seem to be in fractures. Assuming he watches the news or videos on the web, that is. Anyways, I could try to go back and get their help, but honestly, I think that would make things harder. Not easier. Since these demons are all higher leveled than me, and I'm pretty sure based on mana level that I'm a higher level than the others in the team. And it would make drawing them away one at a time even harder if the others were here with me. Although I could see Emily coming in handy here. In fact, I raise my terminal and send her a message, asking if she wants to help me clear out the demons. Since our skills really do mesh very well together. And if we both use our skills in hiding against one of the knights, it's very likely to bring it to us. While I wait for a response from her, I study the breeder in detail. Fortunately, the creature doesn't seem to have sapience. So I don't think it should pose a problem. Just that it is a lot higher level than the average breeder at the start of a fracture and has a different appearance and hatches higher level spawn. Variant spawn. Probably the only reason my plan has a shot at working in the first place. I feel my arm vibrate from the terminal, so I look down at it to find Emily having responded. I'm on my way. Good. I sent her my current location before focusing on the breeder again. Alright, so to start things off, I'll begin using Blood Boil and Life Drain on the closest knight to see if it gets its attention enough to bring it over here. Then I'll have Emily start using the skill she has that makes maladies build up in her target when it begins walking over here. And once it gets within the trees, out of sight of the spiders who are unlikely to notice the knight's absence, Emily can use her needles on it, which I'll follow up by jumping down from the tree and onto its back to tear out its throat. I glance down as I hear the set of footsteps coming from the others growing louder and louder. Looks like she's getting close. After Emily gets here, I pick her up and carry her into the tree myself to her apparent embarrassment before telling her the plan. Then, on the knight's next round trip around the nest, we begin. I start by using Life Drain at a very small degree, but the knight doesn't seem to notice. So I up it up more and more before eventually adding Blood Boil to the works. Which does finally manage to get its attention as it suddenly stops in its patrol route. Then it looks down and eventually follows the trail of red energy leaving its body from Life Drain. Good boy. Come to me. The knight slowly makes his way over here, the soil absorbing the force of its weight in the process, making me really glad that we're not in an office building or something that has tile or cement floors that would make for loud footsteps. And after the creature makes it 75% of the way here, I tap Emily on the shoulder, signaling for her to start the melodies. Tiny black particles begin to build up around the knight as it begins walking faster while raising its sword and looking directly in the direction of the stream of life energy. But I suddenly cut off the skill and grab Emily before jumping to another tree. Meanwhile, the knight continues looking at the one we were just on, it being too dark and the foliage too thick for it to clearly see us from down there without having been shown our exact positions. I wait several seconds for it to enter the tree line before glancing at the nest again to see the other knight beginning to make its way back around, only to focus on this one again. Just a few more steps and there. I quickly tap on Emily's shoulder again, and she takes it as a cue to toss several necrotic needles at the thing. Then I immediately use life drain again and a large dose of blood sacrifice while pumping more blood into my blood claws before I jump from the tree straight down onto the knight, who is currently staggering to his knees. A grin emerges on my face as I land on the knight's back, my shifted hand reaching around for the front of its throat and my other one digging into the scales on its shoulders. My grin grows even wider at the feeling of my claws digging into its armor of scales, since I never would have been able to do that before I had Predator V, and before I was at this level. The knight raises its sword arm back, but instead just loses its balance and the sword falls to the ground since the creature is still being drained, blood-boiled, and affected by both of Emily's skills with me on its back. So it fails to do anything as I tighten my grip on its throat, digging my claws into it in the process very slowly. Our struggle, which isn't much of a struggle for me at this point, continues for several seconds rather quietly, since all the knight's doing is making grunting sounds while barely moving in the process. And eventually it goes silent, face planting into the ground with me almost being tossed off in the process. But I stay on before quickly glancing back to find the other knight beginning to walk over here as well. Shit. I quickly rush over to another tree before climbing up it, reaching a higher branch the moment the other knight makes it to the tree line and sees the corpse of the first knight. My terminal vibrates very lightly, bringing my eyes to it to see a message from Emily. Fight or run? I grin at that before answering with the obvious. Fight. Then we both focus our skills at about the same time on the knight, instantly making it stagger. After what is basically a repeat of the battle with the first knight, the second one falls to the ground, dead as well. I climb off of the second knight after tearing out its throat as well, before turning to find Emily climbing down from the tree she was in. Not sure why she isn't just jumping, but whatever. Emily stares at the corpses with a slightly stunned look on her face, likely surprised about how we actually managed to kill them. But that also has me wondering why she so quickly agreed to help. So I ask her. Because you saved my life before, she answers as if it should be obvious. Which has me blinking twice in confusion. That's it? I trust your instincts, and if you think we can do this, we can, she says, making me openly gape at her for a few seconds, only to eventually shut my mouth again. We stare at each other for a few seconds, before I eventually nod slowly. I should warn you, I tell her, making her stiffen up ever so slightly. The next part of the plan is even more dangerous for you, but less dangerous to me. In all honesty, I don't think you should be here for it. Her eyes widen at that before a slightly disappointed look slips onto her face. But at the same time, a relieved one shows itself as well after that. Interesting. Looks like she was scared in the end. You should head back to Michael and tell them how I'm doing, I tell her before smiling at her, borderline shocking her and adding, thank you for the help. Then I jump back into the trees to get to a vantage point over the nest. Can't have her getting hurt from my plans after all. It's my life that I can put in jeopardy. Not my friends. And while the first part of the plan didn't feel like it had too much risk, since I knew the way the knights were spread out had them far enough that they wouldn't notice the other's absence, and the spiders in the nest itself don't give a damn about the knights, just protecting their breeder, the second part of the plan is more dangerous. For her, at least. For me, the knights are probably a tougher challenge, but they would also only be a challenge that I'd have to deal with. The spiders on the other hand won't be much of a problem for me, but their numbers might let them slip past me to hurt Emily. And I can't have that happen because of my plan. Good to see you're thinking logically even when hunting, I hear Tar's voice return again, making my eyes quickly narrow. Tell me what happened. Tar doesn't say anything for several seconds. But then, out of nowhere, he appears in the air in front of me, looking rather weary. I frown. Are you okay? Seriously. Tell me what happened. I said something I shouldn't have, Tar says in my mind. So I was punished. Punished how? You look ragged. Let's just say it wasn't pleasant, he says with a visible shiver. And I can't explain anything about what I said before. If I break the rules again, telling you more than you're allowed to know right now, then I may very well be locked in the palace for months. Oh. I stare at him for several seconds, just taking in his ragged appearance for a bit, before eventually sighing. Okay. But you better tell me what you were talking about as soon as you're allowed to, do you understand? The Tanuki nods his head before vanishing from Earth as he asks, so what's your plan for dealing with these variants? I focus on the nest again. This one shouldn't be as dangerous as dealing with the knights was. Mostly because these spawn are all weaker than me, and I highly doubt they'll leave their little queen unattended to. Meaning not all of them will be heading towards me at the same time. Then there's the fact that the only one I've seen spin any thread so far is the queen, with none of the arachnids even seeming to have the ability to. So my plan is to bring several of them out into the open in the clearing where I'll fight them, relying on my blood regeneration to keep me afloat. And hopefully getting a level in it in the process. Then I'll repeat that until all of the little ones are dead, before going after their queen. Tar stays silent for a few seconds until eventually asking, and if the spiders have skills you aren't expecting? I'll deal with them as they come. It's what I've always done after all. True, Tar mutters, only to sigh a few seconds later and say, okay, fine. I actually think this plan has a lot of merit to it without too much risk. My face lights up into a brilliant smile at that one sentence that I will remember for the rest of my life. And more importantly, whenever Tar is calling me reckless or tries to say that everything I do is risky. Tar snorts at that in my head. I narrow my eyes on the nest for a few seconds, before trying to use blood boil on one of the spiders in it. But it looks like they're out of my range, which seems to barely extend just to the edge of the nest, about 24 or so meters in front of me. Which is unfortunate. You weren't planning on fighting in the trees anyways, Tar says, pointing out the obvious. Yeah, fighting those things in the trees would be a pain. They clearly have a lot more maneuverability than me, even if I should be more physically stronger than them. Anyways, if I can't get them to come out here while still in this tree, then I'll just have to go out and meet them. I jump down from the tree into the clearing before walking a little bit deeper into it, with the spiders instantly taking note of me the moment I cross the halfway point of the clearing. Then about half of the current 15, a few more were hatched in the time that I fought the knight, apparently begin to leave the web in my direction. 7 of them? I think I can handle that. Back with the others. Belle constantly paces back and forth out of worry over her idiotic and quite possibly suicidal best friend. Meanwhile, Michael repeatedly looks between his terminal and the direction that Scarlet and his sister went, worried about Emily. After several minutes of excruciating silence, they hear sound coming from the east before each of them looks up to find Emily jogging over to them while waving. Belle notices Michael letting out a pent-up breath in relief, but she simply walks over to Emily and asks, "Where's Scarlet? Is she okay? Did she get hurt?" Emily quickly grows both surprised and a little flustered at the repeated questions before Michael comes to her rescue, saying, "Calm down, Belle. Let Emily have some time to answer in between the questions." Scarlet's best friend takes in a deep breath before letting it out again. Then, after being given a few seconds to catch her own breath, Emily finally answers, "Scarlet's fine. She is planning on dealing with the rest of the demons on her own, but I helped her kill the 2 knights over there." A smile blooms on her face. Even got a couple levels from it too. Michael pats her on the head, but Emily just pushes his hand away. So she's still there, fighting? Should I go to help? Would that make things worse? Yes, it would, Artemis answers in her mind before mentally grumbling, and that stiff wouldn't let me hear the end of it if you did. Bell blinks in surprise. Why not? I don't know, he grumbles again. He was complaining one day to me about reckless girls, so I know I would get an earful for letting you do something reckless like that. Something that will not only get you into unnecessary danger while you're at such a low level against those much higher leveled enemies, but something that could get his contractor in trouble too. Reckless girls, he's talking about Scar, isn't he? Scar? If you mean his contractor, then it's very possible, Artemis says, not sounding as arrogant as he usually does when talking to other people. Something Belle still doesn't really understand and gave up trying days ago. Belle looks down with a sad expression on her face before lightly kicking at the ground, only to look up at the green trees that would otherwise be completely bare of leaves if it weren't for the adjusted temperature caused by the dome, making the winter not harsh enough for the leaves to fall. Eventually, she looks down again with a look of determination having replaced the sadness on her face. If I'm a liability for her right now, then I just need to get stronger till I can help her. And not only just her, but Arthur, Mom, and Dad too. We shouldn't just sit here while she's dealing with the variant, Belle says to Michael, briefly surprising him before he eventually nods his head and says, "You're right. Let's go deal with the other demons while she handles the variant." I narrow my eyes, my lips pursed in thought as I stare at the demon acolyte who I am currently holding in a null magic field while using blood boil on it. The creature is focusing on Silver as he rushes around the room fighting the majority of the Class 2 demons, leaving me at the back to take care of the stragglers. But since I've already done that, I've resorted to walking up and testing my skills on this little guy. Through my single-minded focus on the acolyte who is struggling to cast its magic within my field, I vaguely hear shouting coming from Silver. But I ignore it since I can see the guys doing perfectly fine as I continue watching the effects of the null magic field on the acolyte. Rather interesting effects too, since the thing isn't just having to use more mana in its skills, but it's also being thrown off and confused by the change in the mana requirement. An added bonus I didn't think about before. And this is still only at level 1 for the skill. It makes me wonder just how strong the skill will be at level 10, for example. A very nice thought. Scarlet Esker. Silver's voice breaks through my thoughts. I told you to stay at the back and deal with the weaker demons. Not to bully a damned acolyte. I glance at him for a moment before sending 20 blades of blood towards the acolyte while keeping it in my null magic field. The acolyte then struggles to create a barrier of water to block the blades, only for it to fail miserably due to a lack of mana. Which makes sense, considering it's been sitting there firing spells at Silver while inside of my null magic field. My blades then pierce straight into the acolyte, killing the thing without much struggle since all of its bodyguards were busy with Silver. I'm not bullying any acolytes, I defend myself acting like I didn't just kill the thing. And all of the Fomorians back here are already dead. What did you expect me to do? He just groans as he continues sending bolts of silver lightning out at the demons, turning them to ash one by one. You know what? I can't even argue with that, I hear him muttering to himself before shouting at me, just do whatever. I grin at that and give him a thumbs up, which has him rolling his eyes. Then I proceed to target the other acolytes because they give the most EXP and make several null magic fields appear around them as well. And since he said I could do whatever, I shift both of my arms, briefly relishing in the fact that I can do that in the first place now, before rushing over into the first null magic field and tearing into the acolyte that is at least 25 levels above me, the creature not having its bodyguards to be able to defend itself. Which honestly makes them a very nice monster to farm for EXP when I have a nice higher leveled guy here drawing the creature's bodyguards like a magnet. Even if I get a slightly reduced amount of EXP for technically having help in a way. He's only drawing away other demons though, and maybe exhausting some of their mana, so the EXP penalty shouldn't be too big. And it's not like he's trying to pull them. After cutting down a few acolytes, Silver finishes dealing with the dozens upon dozens of other demons in the floor we're in of this rather wide open arcade's main room. Which surprisingly wasn't where the core appeared. It's only been a day since the primary tournament ended, and the moment the demonic assault started, Alan immediately messaged me telling me to work with Silver if I planned on entering a Class 2 fracture. To Silver's displeasure, of course. I'm not sure if he's more upset that I'm already Class 2 while he only appears to be midway through Class 2, or by the fact that he's stuck babysitting me again. Just like in the early days when I first became a guardian. Does she even need my babysitting? The man mutters, likely not meaning for me to hear it. I hold back a snort at that. Do I need a babysitter? Probably not. Will Alan let me go around on my own in a Class 2 fracture where I will most likely end up getting into trouble somehow and almost dying due to the mysterious person manipulating the demons in my fractures? Probably not. At least not until I get a few dozen levels and can handle myself against the demons at the edges of the fractures without any trouble. Sometimes I wonder if you really have a death wish, Tar mutters, having apparently returned from wherever he had vanished to. I do not have a death wish. He snorts at that as I use the clean skill on my shapeshifted arms before focusing on Silver, who is walking up to me, briefly glancing at the mauled corpse of the acolyte next to me. Getting a second claw really didn't help with your mauling habit, Silver mutters with a raised brow, only to raise the other when he sees me shrug. And that other magic you're using? I tense up slightly at that. Right. It would obviously raise questions when I randomly start using null magic in public. But I knew this would happen, and I honestly don't care if people learn that White is my biological mother. So let them speculate all they want. Doesn't change the fact that Alan and Cynthia are the ones I think of as my parents. Never mind, Silver suddenly says, surprising me for a moment before I realize that this is Silver. He probably doesn't care. Let's continue. I nod my head at that and begin following him through the sea of demon corpses, towards the next room. Considering how many kills you're taking from me, I'd say you should already be a high enough level to take on the demons on the outskirts of the fracture by yourself, Silver grunts with a frown on his face as he looks around at the demons I'd killed closer to the edges of the second large room of the arcade. A bowling alley. And I can't help but think he's trying to get rid of me. Well, it makes sense that he would, Tar says, sounding rather amused. You're kind of stealing a bunch of his kills. I mean, it's not like most of those kills would give him EXP anyways. That said, I let my system messages flow through. Level 102 Demon Fomorian defeated. A small EXP bonus is awarded for killing a creature above your level. A small EXP penalty has been extracted for getting assistance in killing a demon, X5. Level 102 Demon Fomorian defeated. A small EXP penalty has been extracted for getting assistance in killing a demon, X4. Level 104 Demon Fomorian defeated. A small EXP penalty has been extracted for getting assistance in killing a demon, X4. Level 105 Demon Fomorian defeated. A small EXP penalty has been extracted for getting assistance in killing a demon, X4. Level 106 Demon Fomorian defeated. A small EXP penalty has been extracted for getting assistance in killing a demon, X4. Level 108 Demon Fomorian defeated. A small EXP penalty has been extracted for getting assistance in killing a demon, X4. Level 125 Demon Acolyte defeated. A large EXP bonus is awarded for killing a creature above your level. A small EXP penalty has been extracted for getting assistance in killing a demon, X2. Level 126 Demon Acolyte defeated. A large EXP bonus is awarded for killing a creature above your level. A small EXP penalty has been extracted for getting assistance in killing a demon, X2. Level 128 Demon Acolyte defeated. A large EXP bonus is awarded for killing a creature above your level. A small EXP penalty has been extracted for getting assistance in killing a demon, X3. Congrats, you have leveled up to level 102. 3 free points have been awarded to you and your stats have been updated. Congrats, you have leveled up to level 111. 3 free points have been awarded to you and your stats have been updated. 1 skill point is awarded for killing a demon, X32. Skill Blood Pull has leveled up to level 13. Skill Null Magic Field has leveled up to level 2. Yeah, I did get quite a lot of levels from that. And all it took was like 5 to 10 minutes of fighting. I wonder why those demons were so weak. Well, they are the weakest demons in the fracture, and you already have the advantage over them in your skills and you being mostly blood leakin, Tar says, making it sound obvious. Not to mention that the demon acolytes are fully focused on magic attacks with very little in the way of defense for themselves. Which is why they have Fomorian's guardians. Fomorians that were mostly attacking Silver. You're sure you won't get in trouble with Alan for this? I ask with a raised brow, and Silver just snorts and turns around, walking away. Guess that's a yes? Either way, looks like I already leveled up null magic field once. So that's very nice. You do need to remember that it'll become a lot harder, Tar begins only to stop when I finish, to level up as I do so. Yes, I know. We learned about it in System Basics while you were asleep. The range of levels for Class 2 is 1.5 times as large as it is for Class 1, meaning that I'll probably stop getting EXP from the Fomorians entirely after I reach around level 190 to 200 or so. And that'll mean I will be stuck having to get another 50 or so levels, relying solely on the stronger and more elite demons in the fracture. It's both annoying and nice that the start of each class has guardians leveling up the fastest by far. Annoying because it's annoying when you're not at the start of the class, and nice because it really does feel nice to see the levels shooting up when you are. I stretch a little as I watch Silver walk through the door into a hallway leading towards where the core is. Then I turn around and begin heading towards a hallway leading elsewhere, where I'll likely find some rather weak demons due to their being quite a ways away from the core. As I walk though, I can't help but wonder if the person manipulating the demons in my fractures will start doing it again now that I'm alone. I'm still not sure who's doing it, but if I had to guess, it's probably someone connected to my father. After all, if he's a member of a branch in the Blood Lycans clan, then he will probably be able to do something like that. I think? Then again, I'm not really sure how that all works. And Tar won't say anything still. You'll find out on your own, Tar says, making me frown. Annoying. Stupid prophecies. Then again, for all I know, the one doing the manipulating of my fractures could be my father himself. Or maybe just someone subordinate to him? I continue walking through the room before entering the hallway where I eventually find more demons after turning a corner further down in said hallway. Demon Fomorian subspecies, not applicable, level 102. Demon Fomorian subspecies, not applicable, level 104. Demon Fomorian subspecies, not applicable, level 103. Demon Fomorian subspecies, not applicable, level 102. Demon Acolyte subspecies, not applicable, level 125. An acolyte and its bodyguards, all of which are almost at the lowest level they can possibly be in this fracture. Not a half bad find, if I'm being honest. The Fomorians all begin rushing towards me as soon as they smell me, meanwhile the acolyte begins raising its staff, only to grow confused when I place a null magic field around it. But it pushes past the confusion a second later to send a bolt of lightning at me, frowning a second later. I jump out of the way of the bolt of lightning before covering my shapeshifted arms with claws of blood, not using the metallicized blood, and charging straight for the Fomorians who are all now several levels below me. Let's begin the hunt. Despite splitting off from Scarlet and telling her to fight on her own, Colin can't help but keep an eye on her as he fights, making his way just a bit closer to the core without getting too close to it. Because he isn't a high enough level to deal with the demons at the core or even near it, having to wait for reinforcements from the base for that. And what he finds when he watches her still surprises him just as much now as it did when he first saw her fighting after reaching Class 2. The girl simply puts up what he can only assume is a field of null magic before rushing forwards and maneuvering around the Fomorians' attacks, striking back at them when they give an opening using her shapeshifted arms, and taking attacks without so much as flinching sometimes just to create more openings. All while, the acolyte seems to struggle with using its magic skills, seemingly using up far more mana than it should otherwise need for each skill. That is most definitely null magic. There's no doubt about it. But for her to have null magic along with her blood magic, she'd have to have etched skills. And the only human with null magic in the world at Class V is white. Colin doesn't stop killing demons with his silver lightning as he runs through the building, keeping one eye on Scarlet through a camouflaged drone that she has most likely already heard. Considering just how great her hearing has become. Could she be White's daughter? It's possible, considering just how powerful she is. And while it is incredibly rare, some children who have etched skills do end up getting a magic that is nothing like their parents'. Seconds pass by, and with each one of them another demon is turned to ash by his lightning. All while he ponders over the subject. But eventually, he decides that she is most likely White's daughter, as that would be the only plausible explanation for how she has both blood and null magic. Not like it matters to me who her parents are. But at least if she knows about it, which she probably would if she got an achievement-locked skill, then she should know she's not an orphan. And the public will likely know this too when they figure it out themselves. Colin feels himself relaxing ever so slightly at that. Because ever since he found out she was an orphan, he couldn't help but feel worried that her background would be discovered by the public and she would end up ostracized. Whether or not she was raised in an orphanage or not doesn't matter. Not if she has etched skills to prove who she is. With that thought and one last glance at the girl who constantly reminds him of his late sister and is currently killing the acolyte with several blades of blood, taking advantage of the Fomorians' focus on her, Colin, otherwise known by the public as Silver, focuses all of his attention on his own battles once again. Scarlet. So you decided to go off on your own after just minutes of entering the fracture and gaining about a dozen levels? Alan asks, trying to gather all the details of what went down in the first fracture. Followed by the fracture afterwards, neither of which actually had anything interesting happen. Nothing beyond me getting to about level 120 from hunting demons. Yep, I answer with a nod while opening up my terminal as I sit in his office on the very comfortable sofa beginning to search up if there's any news on my use of null magic. And you got a new null magic etched skill unlocked as an achievement locked skill? He continues, making me nod without taking my gaze from the terminal. I'm not really sure why we didn't think of this before, but now that we have White's permission to go through with the adoption, we can just let the public know you're her daughter, and we won't have to worry about your being raised as an orphan. Since the people and government wouldn't treat you as an orphan after that. They'd treat you as the daughter of one of the 5 Knights of Humanity. Yeah, that's why I'm fine with using my null magic skills in public, I comment right before finding what I'm looking for. Some streamer going on about his speculations for me being White's daughter. It certainly didn't take long for them to start speculating either. I raise my head finally to find Alan rubbing his temples as he says, well, your biological mother is the only Class B user of null magic in the world, and also the only one who has ever gotten a universal notification announcing her acquisition of etched skill slots. So it'd make sense for people to assume that. Wait, what? You mean universal notifications are public knowledge? I ask, my confusion likely showing on my face. Alan raises his head to look at me with a tired expression on his face and asks, you didn't know that? He blinks for a moment only to shake his head. Right. Of course you wouldn't. They don't teach as much as they should in those Tier 3 city schools. Not as much about guardians at least, compared to how much they teach in higher tier cities. Oh. That's annoying. And why wasn't any of it mentioned in the textbooks I borrowed from? I pause in the middle of speaking as the answer to my own question comes to me. Never mind. It's because I never had a class that focused solely on guardians in school before university. Sure, we had history classes, and classes over demons and stuff. But we never had one focused solely on guardians. A minor oversight on my part. It would certainly explain how the people are automatically jumping to the conclusion that White is your mother just from seeing your use of null magic. Tar adds his 2 cents in, and I can't help but nod. Especially if they have some sort of website or something online used to keep track of the universal notifications. Which in hindsight I wouldn't be surprised if they did. Actually, I open the browser and search that very thing up. And lo and behold, there really is one. Interesting. From the looks of it, most of the demon lords have about 3 or 4 etched skills, with the Lord of Death and the Blood Lord having 4, whereas most of the Knights of Humanity have 2 etched skills, with White being the only one with 3. Which answers my question of how many etched skills White has. It doesn't list any of their titles though, presumably because they got most of them before the system was initialized on Earth. But the Demon King, holy shit. Is this accurate? I can't help but mutter out loud, drawing Alan's attention to what I'm doing, the man having previously been muttering to himself. What? The Demon King's etched skills? He asks after seeing my screen before grimly answering, yes, the Demon King has 6 etched skills. Well, I mutter, unsure of how to take that. Wait, doesn't that also mean that? Yes, it does, Alan says with a grimace. The Blood Lord, the Demon King's son, has all 6 of those etched skills along with his own 4 etched skills on top of them. Although whether he has those skills unlocked for their higher rarity or not is unknown. I stare at him with my mouth agape, unsure of how to respond. Don't forget that the other demon lords have parents too, all of whom have etched skills of their own even if they don't have anywhere near as many as the Demon King. Tar suddenly chips in, making my shock turn into downright fear. And most people only ever etch mythical skills, so those are likely to all be mythical skills. Most likely are title-bearing ones as well. Assuming they've met the requirements for the mythical version of the achievement-locked skills, that is. No wonder the demon lords are all stronger than the knights. The very first thing I do the moment I wake up the next morning is jump out of bed and rush over to the pod dock I had set up in my room, all while activating my Magitech armor and using the clean skill. Not even bothering to change out of my sleeping clothes before I jump into the pod dock. Because it's finally the start of the beta testing period for the game. You really are excited for this, Tar comments, sounding rather amused. Of course I am. It's the very first MMORPG in a magical reality. First game in a magical reality at all even. I explained at one point what an RPG was to Tar, and I still can't help but feel amused by his reaction. I still stick to it, Tar says, sounding smug. These RPGs of yours are mere mockeries of the system created by Titania. But the RPGs were around long before the system arrived on Earth. We ignore that, Tar sagely says as I find myself being drawn into the magical reality where I end up floating in the air with the voice of some lady entering my ear, hello, beta tester, and welcome to Hunter 11. She then goes on and on about some basic details for the game, how it's the first of its kind, and then talking about my character creation. One annoying thing about this magical reality stuff though, is that you can't play as anyone other than your own appearance. Or general appearance at least. You can change up some features, but your body has to fit your reality. After the lady finishes her introduction, I immediately get to creating my character, which is just my typical character in these games. A vampire if I can. One that tends to use a more berserk fighting style and class. Not sure what a vampire is outside of Tartarus, but the berserk fighting style fits you to a T, Tar comments, making me briefly wonder why he's still here. It ends up taking me quite a while to finish my character, and when I do, the lady returns and starts talking again. Then I'm sent to the outskirts of some city from old world medieval times. The typical fantasy city in RPGs. And around me, I actually find several other people appearing or just standing around as well. People I can tell aren't NPCs since they're wearing the same starter equipment as I am, which is really just a set of basic armor with gray chainmail and an undershirt, with silver metal armor over the vital areas. For a moment, I hesitate, only to remember that I changed my features to make me unrecognizable in-game. Specifically, I changed my hair to be purely black, I gave myself human ears instead of my wolf ears, which doesn't seem to have changed my hearing at all, something I find rather interesting as I'm still hearing just like I did with my wolf ears, and I changed my face to be just a little older and rougher looking with a slight mask to make it harder to link my character to me. A nice feature added by the game for those who don't want to be recognized. Overall, it shouldn't be possible to link me to my character. I look up again to find someone spawning right in front of me, making me blink in surprise. And they're no different, as they don't appear to have been expecting to spawn right in front of someone either. We both step back for a moment to examine the other. The player is a guy with bright, unrealistically crimson hair, which leads me to believe that he either changed it to that with his character creation, or he is a guardian outside of the game. And his eyes are just as red, with his hair going down to about his shoulder in length, but also layered in a way that makes it look clean with his hair not falling in his face at all. His face on the other hand doesn't really match his hair or eyes, which leads me to believe that he only changed his face and is a guardian outside of the game. Because his face looks oddly boring compared to the rest, and very off. And if someone were to go to the trouble of changing their eye and hair color to make them look fancy, they wouldn't leave their face boring like that. Although, he could have also just picked a race that has him looking like that. I know the vampire race I chose, which in this game doesn't seem to have a weakness to the sun besides being weaker in terms of magic cast while in sunlight has crimson eyes. Both similar and yet still different from my own eyes in reality. My eyes suddenly widen as I realize I used the usual username I always use in games. Crimson Wolf. I hope that can't be linked to Scarlet Wolf. Normally, I don't have to worry about others figuring it out since they don't have my actual appearance. But now, I doubt anyone would care, especially in this beta test, Tar suddenly says, surprising me for a moment before he explains his reasoning. You said that this beta test was for rich people, right? So shouldn't a lot of the people here be guardians already? Oh. I guess he has a point. Anyways, the guy whose username I can see is Blaze finishes examining me and looks me in the eyes as he says, hello. Hi, I respond with a light nod. A moment of awkward silence passes before I try to walk away with a short, well, I'm going to dash. Wait, he cuts me off, making me pause in my step to turn around and glance at him with a raised brow. I was going to find a teammate right away for the opening event mission, so you'll do if you'd like to work with me. I continue looking at him with a raised brow, only for a notification from the video game system, not the real system, to appear in my face, making me blink in surprise. Event mission acquired. Mission objective: complete the beginner missions within 24 hours of the opening of the beta testing period and then submit a report about how you felt it went. Mission rewards: Class 2 beta armor set and 1 Class 2 skill roll. Completion progress: not applicable. My eyes narrow, but the guy, Blaze, cuts my thoughts off as he says, the event mission has a hidden mechanic to it in that it gives bonus rewards for the first 3 groups of people who are able to finish it, along with a bonus on how quickly it can be completed. So if you want to get those bonus rewards, it would be beneficial to work with someone. I glance at him for a moment before considering the idea. Normally I always go solo in games, but if what he said is really true, then maybe I should work with him just this once. Besides, he looks capable in how he's holding himself. Okay, I finally answer, and he nods his head before we both begin walking towards the city. This'll be interesting,